Hey, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Kaylee, and this is a Read Rant Review, where, you guessed it, I read books and I do rant reviews. I read a bunch of crazy books and then I tell you all about them. I would consider this a book club adjacent, FaceTiming gossip sesh about a book that I read recently. I give you a beat by beat, chapter by chapter breakdown of what I read recently and tell you all about it, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, the stuff I loved, hated, giggled at, whatever. I tell you everything. And so today, that's exactly what we're going to do. So go ahead and get comfy and be prepared to hear me rant about None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. Now, keep in mind, I finished this book earlier today, and I had no intention of posting this video this week. I was going to do this rant next week, but upon finishing it, I said, there's no way that happened, right? Like, there's no way that that's what I just read, right? And I need to unpack it like immediately with haste. I need to talk about this. So that's why we're here today to talk about it. None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, in case you are unfamiliar, is a 390-page thriller book that was published in 2023. And I know you're familiar. And I know for a fact that you have seen this cover everywhere, literally have not been able to escape it. When I started this thriller series on the channel, I knew immediately that this is one that we were going to have to do. And its popularity is also reflected on Goodreads. It's currently at just over 4 stars with just over 1 million ratings, which is definitely one of the more popular books that we've covered recently. I'm going to go ahead and read you the book description. I'm going to give you some disclaimers, tell you about the sponsor of today's video, and then we'll dive right in. So, book description on Goodreads. Celebrating her 45th birthday at her local pub, popular podcaster Alex Summers crosses paths with an unassuming woman called Josie Fair. Josie, it turns out, is also celebrating her 45th birthday. They are, in fact, birthday twins. A few days later, Alex and Josie bump into each other again, this time outside of Alex's children's school. Josie has been listening to Alex's podcast and thinks she might be an interesting subject for her series. She is, she tells Alex, on the cusp of great changes in her life. Josie's life appears to be strange and complicated, and although Alex finds her unsettling, she can't quite resist the temptation to keep making the podcast. Slowly, she starts to realize that Josie has been hiding some very dark secrets, and before she knows it, Josie has inveigled, I've never seen that word before in my lifetime, her way into Alex's life and into her home. But as quickly as she arrived, Josie disappears. Only then does Alex discover that Josie has left a terrible and terrifying legacy in her wake, and that Alex has become the subject of her own true crime podcast, with her life and her family's lives under mortal threat. Who is Josie Fair, and what has she done? In terms of disclaimers, I have the same that I have on all of my videos. The first one being that this review will contain all of the spoilers. Like I said, beat by beat, chapter by chapter breakdown. The second disclaimer is that this review is not for the author. It's not for friends, fans, family, stans, anything of the like. My number one rule, don't make it weird. We're all just here to have a good time. Talk about books and stuff. And my final disclaimer is a content or trigger warning that I like to put on my videos so that you know what we're getting into. However, for my thriller series, I have been skipping that just because oftentimes like content or trigger warning type things have to do with like the buildup, the tension, the plot twist, the like thriller aspect of these books. So I'm not really doing that this time around, but I would just give a general disclaimer of viewer discretion is advised. And if at any point you've got to tap out, no hard feelings whatsoever, protect your peace and whatnot. And I'll just catch you in the next one. And before we get any further in the video, I do just want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Skims. This is a pajama set from the Skims holiday shop that's now live. So freaking cute. This one in particular is a flannel, and I always ran into the issue that whenever I had flannel pajamas, it would either be a terrible texture that always ended up being like itchy, or the fabric was way too heavy and like thick, and I would always get too warm and I couldn't like actually enjoy my pajamas. No, this is like the perfect weight and thickness, and the material is so soft and comfortable. And I also run into the same issue with like pants in particular. Like I have to wear pajama shorts, but no, this pair of pajama bottoms, like full length pants, beyond comfortable. and I don't get too hot wearing it at all, which is like an absolute miracle. I'm so in love with these. I think they're so cute. This exact pattern is what I picture whenever I imagine, you know, the whole matching family sets opening Christmas presents together. This is the epitome of what a pajama set should look like and what one should feel like. So if you're looking for perfect gifts for everyone on your list, the Skims holiday shop is now open at skims.com. After you place your order, be sure to tell them that I sent you. Select YouTube in the survey and be sure to click Read Rant Review on the drop-down menu that follows. Thank you so much, Skims, again for sponsoring today's video. Hopefully you guys get your own little cozy sets of pajamas to tune into the next rant review. So with that, let's get back to the book. Our prologue. There's a drunk guy who stumbles out of a hotel room and tries to get into a car. When he opens up the door, he was expecting his wife. It is not his wife. The woman who is driving, though, says, "No, she sent me. Come on, get inside." He does. He takes a big old drink of water that she hands him, and he goes to sleep. Once we get into the actual book, we begin part 1. We open up with a recurring segment that happens throughout this book. And it is I'll show it to you kind of what it looks like, at least on like the digital version of it, where there's this like kind of page break explanation of what's going on. Coming to Netflix in May. Hi, I'm your birthday twin. Now here's a strange one. Coming from the people behind The Monster Next Door and The Serial Date Swindler. It's a podcast within a documentary, a kind of podumentary, if you will. In June 2019, popular podcaster Alex Summer, better known for her all-woman series of podcasts about successful women, branched out into a one-off project, which she called Hi, I'm Your Birthday Twin, about a local woman who was born on the same day as her. As the project progressed, Summers started to learn much more about her unassuming neighbor than she ever could have imagined. Within weeks, Summers' life was in shreds and 2 people were dead. Absolutely spine-chilling stuff, with some shocking glimpses into the darkest corners of humanity. We guarantee you'll be binging the whole thing in a day. And so then it'll go to this like kind of cut and explanation of like, hey, this is going to be an excerpt from what is in the podumentary or whatever the hell they just called it. Screen is dark. Slowly, the interior of a recording studio is revealed. The text on screen reads, "Recording from Alex Summers' podcast, 20 June 2019. So, really interesting, right? We'll get the little excerpts from what this little documentary thing is, and then we'll get, you know, cuts to like current day and when this all is like actively happening. And then you'll have the future kind of retrospective discussion of what's going on. Very interesting kind of way to tell the story, unique in that way, but also somehow like, I'm not sure. I think it's maybe because I had like the little audiobook thing reading to me that it didn't like land very well. Maybe if I was reading it and like had the visual, you know, delineation between the scenes, I would have felt differently about it, but it just annoyed me. And I'm going to blame my little audio robot voice on that part, but just, I don't know, something to note. But yeah, that's the whole book. The whole book is discussing the documentary thing that I just explained to you in the beginning of this, right? In chapter 1, we figure out how these 2 women met. So it turns out Alex Summers, on her 45th birthday, she goes to this pub. And while there is another woman also celebrating her 45th birthday. And her name is Josie Fair. I'll read you this little bit that I have highlighted from Josie's perspective so you can kind of understand where she's coming from. So today is her 45th birthday. She finds it hard to believe. Once she had been young and she thought 45 would come slow and impossible. She thought 45 would be another world, but it came fast and it's not what she thought it would be. She glances at Walter, her husband, at the fading glory of him, and she wonders how different things would be if she hadn't met him. She had been 13 when they met. He was quite a bit older than her. Well, a lot older than her, in fact. Everyone was shocked at the time, except her. Married at 19, a baby at 22, another one at 24, a life lived in fast forward, and now apparently she should peak and crest and then come slowly, contentedly down on the other side. But it doesn't feel as if there was ever a peak. Rather, an abyss formed of trauma that she keeps circling and circling with a knot of dread in the pit of her stomach. Walter is retired now. His hair has gone, and so has a lot of his hearing and his eyesight, and his midlife peak is somewhere so far back in time, and so mired in the white-hot intensity of rearing small children that it's almost impossible to remember what he was like at her age. I believe Walter is like 25 years older than her, and they met each other when she was 13, and almost immediately began the relationship, right? So she never really got to live her life in any way. And now that she's turning 45, she just feels stuck in this like cycle of abuse in her crappy home life and just not feeling very good about herself and what's going on. And on her 45th birthday, she asked him, instead of getting takeout and hanging out at home like they usually do, to go to this pub that is like around the corner that they have never gone to, because it always seemed like it was too young for them, right? That it was just like not really their thing, their vibe. But she wants to do something different, right? She's having this like awakening of wanting to do something different, and this like, start of a change in her life. And while at the pub, the woman that I had mentioned previously, Alex Summers, comes in. Alex Summers is a very incredibly successful podcaster. She comes in to the pub to celebrate her birthday. She has her husband, her sisters, and friends. It's like a party of like 12 people go over here, and they're all laughing and giggling and shouting and taking shots and like hanging out and having a good time. And Josie is just watching from the corner and wondering how old this woman could be, right? How like full of life that she is. And eventually Alex opens up a card, and Josie from across the restaurant is able to see that it's for a 45th birthday. And she's like, oh my God. She comments this to her husband, Walter. She says, look, 45, we're birthday twins. Josie feels the gnawing sense of grief that she has experienced for most of her life rush through her. She's never found anything to pin the feeling to before. She never knew what it meant, but now she knows what it means. It means she's wrong, that everything, literally everything about her is wrong, and that she's running out of time to make herself right. And so seeing Alex is kind of like the nail in the coffin of this like change thing that I've mentioned that she's been feeling, and this like, I don't know, just this like need to be doing something different. And so eventually her and Alex run into each other in the bathroom, and she approaches her and she says, hi, I'm your birthday twin. And for the rest of dinner, Josie is literally just staring at this woman, staring at her necklace and the way she plays with like the pendant on it. And Josie starts to think how she wants a necklace with a pendant on it. And just this like festering, maybe jealousy. It's not really what it's recognized as, but that's kind of what it is, right? She goes home that night. She has a dream about Alex. And then when she wakes up, she ends up Googling her. She finds her podcast. Like I said, Alex Summers is a very, very popular podcaster. Alex's podcast is called All Women, or All Woman. And it's all these different interviews with these women and how successful they are, how they got there, just kind of advice and just their life stories and crazy things that they've done. And this particular one that Josie listens to, this woman is talking about how her husband had died when she was very young, like early on in their marriage. I think they were in their 30s, and how it was an abusive, like terrible marriage. And she doesn't think that she really would have been able to get out of it. Like she would have eventually. But her husband dying at a young age was like the clean break that she needed to start her life and do all this crazy stuff. And now she's like a CEO of this thing, and she's in this like happy marriage, and everything's going great for her, and her kids are doing well. And it was that, it just reflecting on how the death of the husband was what she needed to really start living her life, right? The death of this abusive husband. And then Josie just continues to stalk Alex's Instagram and be jealous of how like picture perfect it is. And then we cut to, now just to note too, the entirety of this book is told in third person point of view, but it'll be like focused on, Alex or Josie, and then kind of flipping back of like which one we're telling the point of, that we're like talking about. So cut to what Alex is up to over at her house, and it turns out that maybe things aren't so picture perfect. It's the following morning, right after the birthday party, and her husband, Nathan, and don't worry, I know I'll be saying a lot of names. I'll have a name list up on screen for easy reference for everybody. So if you get too jumbly, I'll have that up on screen for you. So Alex's husband, Nathan, is an alcoholic. And oftentimes he'll start drinking, and then he'll hit a certain point where he just cannot stop, and he'll choose to just stay out and go and do whatever and go on kind of like a bender of sorts. And that's exactly what he did last night. He ended up, getting so drunk that he just got like a hotel room, and he stayed, wherever the heck it was. And he apologizes to her profusely. And she's just like going around the house just frustrated and taking care of her two children. She has, I think they're 9 and 11 years old. I'm pretty sure her daughter's about to like graduate from like elementary to middle school. Like that's the type of age range. And then the son's a couple years younger. So it should actually be right around there. But anyway, so she's like taking care of her kids, getting them ready for school, and just reflecting on how frustrated she is with like her husband. And so over the next week, they're just kind of going on about their life, doing their own things. And Josie is continuing to binge all of Alex's podcasts. She has listened to absolutely everything, and she has like watched Alex's Instagram like a hawk and scrolled through all of it. And there's a picture that she finds where she sees Alex's daughter and her school uniform. And Josie finds out that her kids and Alex's kids went to the same school. Like I said, Alex's kids are younger. They're still in school. Josie's children are both in their 20s, right? So they're removed from school, but she realizes that they, you know what I mean? Her daughters went to the same school that her kids go to. Does that make sense? And so knowing that information in chapter 3, Josie uses it to her advantage and just so happens to walk her dog in front of that school and kind of hanging about until she miraculously runs into Alex. Alex has had a rough morning, right? It's been a week. Over the last day or two, her husband has had yet another bender where he like went out drinking and like was completely unresponsive to any of her text messages and just like not doing very well. And so she's having another rough day. She's kind of in a mood, but she was walking her kids to school. And after she drops them off, she's trying to walk back and she runs into Josie, right? Her birthday twin. And she says, "Oh my God, hello." And there's a note about Josie's outfit. It's like denim on denim. Her dog has like a denim like leash and like, you know what I mean? Like little vest, collar, body thing on it. And a denim purse, denim top to bottom, everything. And she notes how kind of weird it is and just kind of how like off-puttingly endearing that Josie is. But she says hello and they make some small talk. And Josie says, "Hey, you know, I have been listening to your podcast and I think I have an idea for it. I want to talk to you about it. Like, do you have a minute?" She says, "No, weirdo, I'm busy." So Josie pushes again, right? And she's like asking, begging, basically. She's like, "Please, just like, if we can get a coffee tomorrow or just something, like if you can just hear me out about this idea. Like, I want to talk to you about this." She says, "Okay, fine, I guess." And so that evening, when Josie returns home, we get a little bit of like an insight to her home life. And seeing Alex that day and Alex with her daughter really kind of made Josie reflect even more about her relationships with her daughters. So she has one named Erin who still lives in the house and is a recluse. She's like locked away in her bedroom. She literally has not seen her daughter for 6 months, does not talk to her. They like the extent of their communication is that Josie will drop off baby food outside of her daughter's door and then she'll pick up the like dirty plate later in the night and that's it. Otherwise they haven't talked. And she's just like reflecting as she's going by the room and dropping this off about how difficult it is and how things just kind of spiral out of control. Like you put something off long enough or even just a little while that the longer it goes on, the more and more difficult that it is to address. And we're left with this kind of like vague, weird feeling about what that could mean. And I'll address the baby food thing in a minute, I promise. I know that's kind of a weird thing to drop on you. It was a weird thing to drop in the book as well, but it all circles back. And we also learn that so that's her oldest daughter, Erin, and then her youngest daughter, Roxy, has pretty much disappeared. When Roxy turned 16, she ran away from home and hasn't heard a single thing about her. And so Josie tries to look her up online on this particular night. She does periodically, but she does on this particular night and can't find anything. Like there's nothing that comes up. And then there's also a note that night when she goes to sleep that her husband lays next to her. Neither of them can sleep. And then eventually he gets up and she knows that he won't come back to bed that night. Oh, it's kind of weird. Immediately, this entire book, I just felt on edge and just like uncomfortable. And I got a very similar vibe when I read the book Big Swiss, where it was just a main female character that is just so off-putting, but in a way that's like intriguing. And it's like, I have to know more about this, but also I am so wildly like icked out and I feel like I have to look away. It is I haven't had that experience very often in books. Like I said, I think Big Swiss is the only other one that I've read that has made me feel that way. And I actually really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I want to read more books like that. In general, like if you're new to the channel, hey, I very recently got back into reading. And like 2023 is when I started reading again. And then over the last like month or so is the first time that I've really started to dabble in like thriller books. Prior to that, it was just like romance and sci-fi. and a little bit of like just general like lit fic stuff. But this is my first time reading thrillers in a very, very long time. Like, I loved Jennifer McMahon growing up. Like, I read everything of hers, and that was like the closest to like a mystery type books that I would read. So I'm having a great time. If you have any recommendations, please like put them down below, because I've really enjoyed covering these types of books and reading them in general for myself. It's been a lot of fun. I'm like really having a good time over here. So anyway, we cut into chapter 4. Alex brings her clothes to get altered, and her and Josie have a little bit of a conversation while she's like going through and doing the fitting and whatnot. And Josie says, hey, so I think you should interview me for your podcast. I know I'm not really significant. I don't really have anything going on in my life, but I'm going to change that. Like, I'm on the brink of change. And I think you've only ever interviewed people after the change. So what if you were able to like document it as it happened? Like, that would be a really, really cool and unique perspective. She says, okay, that sounds interesting. Like, I'm, again, uncomfortable by her in general. Like, there's just like a bad vibe that Alex picks up on, but the, investigative journalist inside of her can't say no to this. And so they decide that they're going to get coffee tomorrow to talk a little bit more about everything. And then there's a little bit more like reflection of Alex that night, of domestic life wise, whenever she goes home and is thinking about her husband Nathan, and kind of talks herself out of feeling bad about things. Oftentimes there's a lot of like domestic stuff that gets depicted in here, and I would definitely call that a highlight of Lisa Jewell's, the way that very like mundane experiences are written about. It still feels interesting, and it still feels valuable to the plot in a way that I think other writers, whenever I read these like slice of life type scenes, or these like, I don't know, whatever, it feels like filler. But even these chapters that maybe you could argue would be a little filler, or maybe some sentences or paragraphs, it still felt significant, and the way that it was writing still felt interesting. And I don't think there was really maybe there was 1 or 2 points where I felt an urge to skim a paragraph, because I was like, okay, does this actually matter? But honestly, for only a couple paragraphs for an entire book where I felt that way means a lot. And so chapter 5, the two of them meet up at a coffee shop, and they decide that they're going to call the podcast Hi, I'm Your Birthday Twin, since that was how they were introduced, or that's how, Josie introduced herself to Alex, and that Alex is going to interview Josie about her entire life up until that exact moment. And they'll do it at Alex's house. She has a podcasting studio, like a recording studio in her backyard, and like a little, she shed type setup. And so Josie's going to come over, and they're going to start filming. And I think I had, her like reasoning for this. Okay, then this is Josie's kind of justification about the whole change thing. It's happening to me right now. I've been living the same life for 30 years. 30 years. Been with my husband since I was 15 years old. Nothing has ever changed. I've worn the same clothes and had the same hairstyle, had the same conversations at the same times, sat on the same side of the same sofa every single night of my life for 30 years. And the things, she pauses, and Alex sees a red flush pass from her collarbones to her neck and cheeks. The things that have happened to me, bad things, Alex. Really bad things. My marriage, my husband, he's very complicated, and our family has been quite traumatic at times. And I don't know, listening to your podcasts, those amazing women, I'm 45. If I don't break free of this past now, when will I? It's time. It's time for me to change everything. And I'm not asking you to help me, Alex. I just want you want me to tell your story? Yes, that's exactly what I want, because I know I look quite ordinary, but my story is extraordinary, and it deserves to be heard. Chapter 6, Josie goes over to Alex's house for the first recording of the podcast. And of note, she brings her dog, Fred. He gets brought up kind of like throughout this book. Is it significant? Maybe, maybe not. There's like one particular quote way later in the book that I'm going to say that talks about Fred, so I want to start bringing him up now. But she and Fred are like inseparable, okay? That's one thing to know. Her and her little cutie patootie dog. He's young. He's only like 2 years old, and they're like BFFs, okay? So just keep that in mind. So she shows up at this recording studio. Alex asks how it began. Hey, like, has your mom ever told you about like the day you were born? Did she give you any information? And she says, no. The only thing that she's ever told me is that it hurts and that she would never do it again. And I'm an only child. She grew up on this like estate that her mom is still at, that her mom like manages or works at or something. They continue on, and she says how she doesn't know who her dad is. And Alex is like, wait a second, the guy that you were with at the pub thing, that wasn't your dad? And she says, no, don't worry, like, you're not the only one to think that. That was my husband. and goes on to tell Alex that they met when she was 13 and he was 42. Alex falls silent for a moment. Wow, that's... Yeah, I know how it seems, but it didn't quite feel how it sounds at the time. It's hard to explain. There's power in being a teenager. I miss that power in some ways, and I would like it back. In what way was there power? Josie shrugs again. Just in the way that you have something that a lot of people want, a lot of men want, and a lot of them want it. They want it so much. It? Do you mean youth? Yes, that's exactly what I mean. And when you meet someone who is very clear about what they want, and you know that the only thing that stands between what they want and what you have is your consent, sometimes as a very young girl, there's power in giving that consent. Or at least that's how it felt at the time. That's how they make you feel, but really it's not, is it? I can see that now. I can see that maybe I was being used, that maybe I was even being groomed, but that feeling of being powerful right at the start, when I was still in control, I miss that sometimes. I really do. And what I'd like more than anything is to get it back. Wow, okay, so wow. All right. And that's Alex's reaction, by the way. Alex, she keeps it cool. She keeps it cool, calm, and collected during the interview. But after Josie leaves, pretty much shortly after that, grand reveal announcement, Alex is just sitting there, disgusted. And she cannot believe that that man was her husband. The chapter kind of cuts in the middle and we go to the Netflix documentary point of view thing, and in that somebody is being interviewed who was Josie's friend in elementary school, and they go on to talk about how controlling she was. And Alex is the one that's interviewing these people on this documentary. She goes on to ask, so do you think that Walter, groomed her? Do you think he did that to her? And the childhood friend goes, I mean, yeah, probably, but don't get it twisted. She also wanted him, and she knew what she was doing. Oh, okay, interesting. And then another documentary interview thing happens, and this time it's Alex interviewing one of Walter's children. So Josie's husband, Walter, he had 2 children and a previous wife before he and Josie got together. His kids are maybe a couple years younger than she is. The timelines are kind of muddy because he and his wife got divorced when the kids were 10 and they never talked again after that. But they would have gotten divorced when she was 22. So yeah, you know what I mean? The ages are a little close here if that's when they would have gotten married. So assuming they would have actually gotten, I don't know. It's messy stuff. But anyway, when the mom found out that Walter was in this relationship with a child, they left. They immigrated. They left the country. She took the 2 boys and never talked to Walter again, or at least never saw them in person again. He emails the kids and they still talk in that regard, but he has not seen his father since he was 10 years old, since all of this stuff went down with Josie. Oh, okay. Okay. Little POV shift, I guess, or descriptor or whatever. And we're back to Josie. And after the interview that day, right when she had first opened up about her relationship to Alex, she's home and she's reflecting about how beautiful Alex's house was. And she opens up her underwear drawer and tucks a little Nespresso pod. So Josie just starts stealing these little tiny things from Alex's house that just remind her of how beautiful and put together it is and how good of an experience it was. She just tucks it away in this little secret hidey hole in her underwear drawer and just adds it to this little collection of things that make her happy. Oh, crazy. Okay. In the following chapter, so there's been dates for each of these these chapters. So it's been pretty chronological, right? After we hit the first week, it's been 18, 19, 20. And so today's the June 21st, right? So the very next morning, and I'll get better about saying the dates. I've been kind of slacking on you there. They met on June 8th, right? That was their birthday. And now we're on the 21st. And Alex wakes up and she takes her daughter to school. And when she's dropping her off, she remembers, oh yeah, she mentioned, right, Josie had mentioned to me that her daughters went to the same school. And so she pulls aside it's not a headmaster, what is it, the office manager, pulls over this office manager and says, hey, do you remember Aaron and Roxy Fair, right, Josie's daughters? She's like, I mean, yeah, it's been a while, but I pride myself in remembering all of my students, and I'm pretty sure that Erin was undiagnosed, but we're pretty sure that she was on the autism spectrum. And Roxy was a troublesome kid. She broke a kid's finger when they were really, really young. And then later on, she broke Erin's arm And then that's when Walter and Josie had like pulled her out and homeschooled her. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's not really what she was expecting. A couple days later on Sunday, June 23rd, we're at Josie's house. And she's cooking roast for dinner. Her and Walter are going to eat together. And she goes to drop off like a plate of food for her daughter and is like thinking. And she's like, okay, I will go into her room next week. Like I'll go in there and I'll talk to her and we'll get everything figured out. Right. And she's just like noting like the room smells really, really bad. And she can hear the squeaking of like a gaming chair because Erin's just like always on the computer and there's a chair that she's always on. And that's the extent. Like she's tried to pop open the door before and like look in there or try to see her, but the door's like barricaded closed, and so she can never open it all the way. But whenever she does, it's incredibly messy and smelly, and she just hears like the like the noises from her headphones and then the squeaking of the gaming chair, and collects herself and she's like, next week I'll deal with this finally. I know that I can. And then she decides like, I'll deal with this and I'll clean her room and we'll get all this together, right? She decides to take her dog for a walk and just so happens to go by Alex's house, sees Alex out on a walk with her sisters, and they're like having a good time, giggling, and just again, that like spark of jealousy of everything. Like she wishes that she had siblings and that she had friends like that and could look like that and blah, blah, blah. And watches as they enter the house, right? As Alex goes into her house with her sisters, she watches as they go inside the house. And when they open the door, she can see Nathan in the background and just kind of notes that her husband's, finally back, like finally around or whatever. Because whenever she went over for the interview, that was when Nathan had still been on like the bender or was still recovering or whatever. So she like still hasn't met Nathan, because anytime that they've ran into each other, he's been, inebriated or incapacitated or however you want to phrase it, right? And so then Josie walks up onto their front porch and picks up a flower from the planter and puts it in her pocket and then walks home. I am so uncomfortable by this woman. So part of the podcast, right, and wanting to know all about Josie and her life and whatnot would also involve seeing like where she grew up, like how her and Walter met or where they met at and how all of that came about. And so they decide that the following day that they're going to do the podcast at the estate, or they're at least going to go and like before the podcast, go and visit the estate where she grew up, which also means going and meeting Josie's mom. The very, very first question that Josie's mom asks is, why are you talking to her? Like, Josie's so freaking lame is pretty much what's going on. And so Alex is like, oh, we're like under the guise. I guess we're keeping it a secret about this whole great change thing. And so tells the mom that it's like that they're birthday twins. And she just wants to, talk about people that were born in the same place, examine the whole like nurture versus nature life experiences, at the same time where you end up at, blah, blah, blah. And they go on to talk. And it is very, very clear, very, very immediately that Josie's mom hates her and that Josie's mom is like a raging narcissist. And this puts a lot into perspective for Alex. Pat leads them to her flat where Josie lived when she was a child. It's on the ground floor with a flower bed outside, and Pat lets them in. Here, says Josie, opening the door into a room that is painted pink and dressed for a young girl. This was my room, and this is where I first saw Walter through the window. He was like a groundskeeper, I believe, or he did something out on the estate, and so he started working out there. And so that's why he was like around her quite a bit. Alex stands for a moment and absorbs the energy in the room. Pictures of a young Josie peering through the slats of the wooden Venetian blinds that had once covered this window. Back in the kitchen, she touches the top of the dining table. Is this where you were sitting when Walter ate your birthday cake? Josie smiles. Yes, not this table. This one's new, but yes, right here. Alex turns to Pat. Did you know? She asks. That day, Josie's 14th birthday. Did you know what was going to happen? You mean with Josie and Walter? No, of course not. I mean, come on. He was older than me. How could I have thought? How could I have known? And what did you think when you found out? You must have felt quite shocked. Well, what do you think? Pat issues this with a note of dark fury. Alex looks at Josie. Her face is pinched, and Alex takes a breath and stops herself from asking her next question. And so Alex goes home that night and is talking to her husband, Nathan, a little bit about the experience. She hasn't really told him about what, the topic is or why she's having Josie around and everything, but just says that it's compelling. Like, hearing her story is compelling. And internally, she's thinking to herself, a husband who groomed her as a 14-year-old child, a narcissistic mother, two problematic children, and brushes with social services. But the compelling things feel precious somehow, half-formed and delicate, not yet ready for the judgment of her husband. And so she tells him that, like, she's not going to tell him about the podcast, and he's just going to have to listen to find out. And so on June 26th, Wednesday, Josie arrives for yet another day of interviewing, but when she gets there, Nathan opens the door instead of Alex. And there's a lot of really, really awkward tension between the two of them. Like, she does not like Nathan at all. And, but he lets her in, and she makes her way back to, like, the podcast studio in the back garden area. And her and Alex sit down for a conversation, and they recap a little bit of, like, you know, hey, you know, yesterday was kind of weird with your mom. Like, you seemed pretty stressed. Like, what was that about? She goes on and she's like, my mom sucks. Like, my mom literally hates me. I know she gives off the vibe of being a decent person, all her talk of saving the estate and everything, but believe you me, she's not what she seems. She was a terrible mother, Alex. A terrible, terrible mother. Actually, I could see that, Josie, and I'd like to talk about it today if that's okay with you. Josie shrugs. I suppose so. I don't really know. If you think it'll be good for the podcast, then yes. And so then we get, like, a cut to, you know, this, like, Netflix documentary. And then we get told their interview about Josie's life that day through the lens of the Netflix documentary. Learn about Josie's 15th birthday party and how her and the childhood friend who got interviewed earlier that we had talked about, the one that was like, oh yeah, she was so controlling, blah, blah, blah. So the two of them on Josie's 15th birthday went out to, like, a little party thing, and they were drinking, and this guy tried to kiss her, and she didn't want to kiss him. And then she got yelled at by her mother for not wanting to party and be a 15-year-old and not, like, getting out of the house. And she was just, like, upset about this from her mom and upset about not wanting to be around these boys. And she's, like, walking around outside. And Walter, like we said, who works on the property, ends up seeing her, and he's like, hey, you know, remembered her birthday, right? On the 14th birthday, he was there for some reason and got invited, had some cake. Our 15th birthday, he remembered her birthday. I was going to thank him for the bracelet, but I knew what was going to happen. I felt powerful then, and he took me to the pub. I sat in a pub with a 42-year-old man, and I was 15, and he poured a shot of vodka into my lemonade, and he kissed me. And I remember looking down at my hands, at the pen scribbles on them from school, and looking down at my shoes, these battered old kickers with the little leather tags that everyone wore back then, and thinking, this is it. I'm jumping. I'm going. I'm leaving this world. I'm entering another. And it was almost as if I knew, even then, that there was no way back. That once I'd befriended the monster, that was it for life. And, you know, an hour or two later, she ends up leaving and goes back home. And Alex is just in the podcast room, and she's just like, Jesus Christ, dude. She's like, Josie, you married, like, internally. She's, like, thinking to herself, like, wow, like, you married a predator. This is freaking insane. She goes to the bathroom and she goes to wash her hands, but the soap is missing. It's kind of weird. Very weird. She talks to her husband about it. Her husband's like, I bet your weird friend stole it. And she's like, shut up. No, that'd be so strange. I bet it was one of the kids. Uh-oh. It's not setting a good tone. And then we cut into... So the other thing too is, like, so we'll have a singular day, and if you can see, it'll have, like, midday from, like, one of the women's point of view. This is so hard to scroll with one hand. Midday from one woman's point of view, and then it'll be, like, 1 p.m. from the other woman's. And then maybe we'll cut back and we'll go back and see what the other one's up to the following day. And then sometimes it'll be the Netflix documentary. And it's, like, 8 different ways to convey this, like, pretty limited timeline and, like, what's going on. It's just interesting. A linear, non-linear... Yeah. It's like a linear story, but almost like non-linear point of views to be telling it in a linear order, if that makes sense. Very odd. Very, like I said, interesting. But regardless, a hand soap's missing. And when we go into Josie's point of view at 1 p.m., she is tucking the hand soap away in her underwear drawer as well, with all of the other little trinkets and whatnot that she has been, like, slowly collecting from Alex's house. And she's, like, reflecting about how Alex had looked at her. Just like she was looking at her like she was the only person in the world, and that she was, like, so fascinating, and how good that made her feel. Oh no. And then on June 29th, it's raining outside, and Alex is walking her daughter to a birthday party, and along the walk, they run into Josie out walking her dog. And they make a comment like, oh my God, it's raining outside. Like, what? This isn't very good weather. She's like, well, I have to walk him now, or I'd never walk him, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, bye, Josie. They go about their way. And, you know, Alex goes to this party with her daughter. She has a little, you know, a little hors d'oeuvre or whatever, hangs out, gossips with the little moms for a little bit, and then decides to go back. And when she's going home, Josie is standing in the exact same spot on the sidewalk. She has not moved a single inch. And she says, "Hey, you okay there? Like, what's going on?" And she says that talking about all of this stuff again just really like messed her up. And so Alex like kind of shepherds her into a coffee shop, and she goes up to get like a coffee and some little snacks or something for them. And when she turns around, Josie's gone. Okay. Cut back to Josie's point of view, and she gets home, she drives off the dog and goes on about life kind of like normal, right? She sits on the other end of the sofa from Walter and stares numbly at the football. She hates the sound of football, the dull bass monotone of male calls, the incessant up and down and intonation of the commentators, the whistles and the drums. It sounds like the backdrop to a nightmare, an oncoming army of bloodless killers. It's been the soundtrack of her every weekends for 27 years, since she first moved into Walter's flat. She'd watched with him in the early years, professed her enthusiasm for the game, shouted when their team scored, pretended to be devastated when they lost. Although, no, not pretended. It had been real, at the time. Everything she thought, did, wanted, cared about back then, had been through the filter of Walter. All she had wanted from the moment they first got together was to please him, to be the person he thought she was, to be his dream come true. And then she tells him that she's not feeling very well and she's going to go and lay down. And they say, "I love you," and then she leaves. And we get the information about what happened. So when she was at the coffee shop, she had thought that she had seen Roxy, like her daughter that has been missing for however long. She thought that she saw Roxy. And so that's what had like triggered this like crazy reaction from her. The rest of the weekend, Josie is just laid up in bed, being sick and kind of just recovering from, this sighting, or what she thought might have been a sighting. And in the next podcast session, they talk about what Walter does currently, which is literally just he's living on his pension and watches football and scrolls on his laptop all day and emails his sons. And Alex says, "His sons, like, what are you talking about?" And she's like, "Yeah, he was married and had 2 kids, but I didn't know that at the time when he and I had started dating. Like, I didn't know for like a couple of years that he even had a wife and kids." And Alex is like, "Well, that's kind of weird. Like, how did you not know that?" It turns out like his job required him to be where they were, and so he had the flat where they live currently. And then his family lived in like another town or something. And so he would come out for work and then he would be at the flat for like extended amounts of times and then like go home on the weekends basically. And so she ended up moving into that flat with him. And then that is where she has lived ever since. And even that flat, we find out later, he's had that flat since he was like a teenage kid. Like I think that was his dad's thing that they bought, or maybe even his grandpa's. Like it has just been this stagnant life, right, for years and years and years and years. And after the interview, when Josie, it's still raining outside, I believe, or it's raining again or something, and Josie drives her home, and she's like watching as she goes into the house and sees Walter and just reflecting on this like creepy old man and how he's, impacted Josie's life and stuff. You're just witnessing it all. And when she goes home that night, she decides that she's going to try to like Google everybody in this family and try and get some more information, but there's like nothing. She can't find any information whatsoever. And in chapter 14 on July 4th, it's really hot out and Josie's getting ready to go over to Alex's house to do another podcast episode. And on this day, she decides to wear this shirt that she had that was like a beach, like bikini cover up that she had, or like a bathing suit cover up that she had, and like a little dress or something. She changes her total outfit where there's no denim, right? Which is a huge deal. This is like the first time that she hasn't worn denim in years. And she's just talking about internally about how it just doesn't feel right anymore. And she even like changes her earrings, and she says that she's going to go and get ice cream. She's going to take the dog for a walk and go and get ice cream. There's like, "Oh my God, that sounds like a great idea. Like, I'll come with you." And she tells him no, and tries to play it off, but it's very clear that he's upset about this because she has just been blowing him off, and he's asked her a couple of times, like, "Hey, where are you going all the time? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're a homebody. What's happening? And you're being really freaking rude to me constantly. Like, you're just being sassy. Like, what's going on?" And she's like, "Oh, there's this mom, from the girls' school that, I've been getting coffee with and like, hanging out with and stuff." And he's like, kind of suspicious about it, but he doesn't really bring it up, right? Not really very confrontational type people. And so when Josie goes over to Alex's house this day, Immediately, she says, "Oh," says Alex, eyeing Josie up and down on her doorstep. 15 minutes later, "No denim." "No," Josie replies brightly. "Not today. I wasn't in the mood. I'd love for you to talk to me one day, maybe, about the denim. Would that be okay?" "Yeah, I think I'd like to talk about it." And when she goes into Alex's house, Josie, is talking about how she wishes that she had her own space because she doesn't really know what she likes. Like, whenever she moved in with Walter, it was Walter's house, and everything there and everything that's decorated, it's everything of his. And she wouldn't even know where to begin. She wouldn't know, what to wear or what she likes or how she would want to decorate anything because she's just never had the opportunity to. And then it cuts to like the podcast documentary interview piece of it. And on this chunk, Josie is telling Alex about how she had intercourse with Walter. It was her first time doing such a thing on her 16th birthday. It was the first time that she had gone to the flat with Walter, right? The one that she's currently living in. And he had asked her to marry him. And yeah, all downhill from there. I mean, it's been downhill this entire time, but like, especially from there. And on July 5th, the next day, Alex is at her house working on some stuff, and her neighbor boy, he's like in his 20s, he comes over asking for a key to his house because they're all friendly and she keeps a spare for these types of instances. And she goes around looking for it, and she realizes, like, oh, wait a second, like, you're the same age as Josie's kids, right? Aaron and Roxy, like, he must have gone to school with them. And so she asks him about them, and if, he remembers them at all. And he goes on to say that, like, Roxy was really, really scary, and Aaron was really kind of quiet and strange. And I mean, yeah, there was like some rumors like about abuse, I guess. The older one, Erin, she was weird, literally the weirdest person I've ever met. I never spoke to her, but I would see her around with these really dark brown eyes, and she was so thin. Apparently she never ate solid food. That's what I had heard. Never in her life, only soft food. Okay, that's interesting things to kind of note. And in chapter 16, the following day, on July 6th, Josie goes out to the same cafe that her and Alex have been to a couple times, and then she decides to go to Alex's house. They don't have an appointment or anything for the podcast, but she just wants to go. And nobody's home at the time, and so she just stands there staring into the windows and gets like really close to the house and staring into the windows. It's like really, really super uber creepy. And then when she decides like she needs to leave before anybody gets home and catches her because she has no good reason to be there, she decides to open up their recycling bin and takes a magazine off of the top of it, like one of Alex's like fashion magazines that she was recycling. Decides just like shoves it in her pants and keeps walking. Awesome. And of course, right, later when they do return home, they had like a Ring doorbell notification, right? Like their little security system had notified them that somebody was like in front of their house. And so Nathan, right, Alex's husband, had seen this footage, and he says, "Hey, WTF about like your weird friend, like what the hell is she doing? Like this is so strange." And Alex gets this like horrible feeling in her, like the pit of her stomach of like, there's no reason for any of that. I don't even know where to begin on any of that. Like this is just not very good. And back to Josie that night, she's like flipping through the magazine, and the receipt falls out, and it's a receipt that is from the 8th of June, right? So the day that they had met, their mutual birthday, whatever. And she takes the receipt out and she kisses it, and then she like tucks it away into her underwear drawer with all the other little knickknack things. Oh my God. I hate it here. I hate it here so much. This is so creepy. This is so creepy. And in their next interview that they have, talking about everything, they finally talk about the jacket. And the reason that she likes denim is being like very, very early on in their relationship. And Walter had made a comment to Josie about how this jacket, it's just you. Something to do with my essence being inside of it. Something to do with the smell, maybe. And he made the jacket sound so powerful and important that it made me feel like the jacket was maybe lucky in some way, had brought us together maybe. I don't know. It all sounds so stupid when I try to explain it. But after that, I think I always made sure I was wearing something denim so that maybe that way Walter felt about me, the way that Walter felt about me might last forever. Oh, okay. Awesome. So they have a little bit more back and forth, right, about Walter and meeting him and the impact. And You know, maybe this wasn't like the greatest, most healthy relationship. And she literally hasn't told anybody about this. She hasn't told her sisters because they would be very judgmental of it, and they're already like pretty critical of him. And she hasn't told any friends or anybody. And so this is the first time that she's like said it out loud to somebody, and then almost like immediately regrets it. Because Josie's first immediate question about like him going on these drinks and like not coming home is he cheating on you? He says, no, says Alex. No, it's not like that. Josie stares at her intensely. What are you going to do about it? She says. Alex sighs. I have no idea. He used to do it a lot before the children were born, and I did have my concerns back then. Did wonder if he was going to do the right thing, if he was going to be the right father for my children, but then Eliza arrived and he changed overnight. I thought that was that, you know? But then a couple of years ago, it started up again. It feels almost as if he thinks that we've got to the end of the intense bit of parenting and that we're on the home run, that he feels, well, free again. Both women fall silent, and then Josie sighs and says, men. And there it is. The point which it all boils down to eventually. The point where there are no words, no theories, no explanations for behaviors that just baffle and infuriate and hurt. Just that. Men. So Alex then goes on to say, like, hey, if you're not going to be wearing denim anymore, how about we go to the shops and go and buy you some more clothes? Like, she's not going to buy Josie these clothes, but she's going to help her pick out some stuff. And so they do like a little mini shopping spree. They go out to these shops, and the women there are super kind and helping her pick out some things. And now she has a couple of dresses to wear. And it's very, very sweet. And, you know, even Alex gets a couple of things. And when Josie leaves that day, beyond just having the dresses and this new experience and, you know, the confiding from Alex, she also takes Alex's bracelet that was on the little table right by the front door. And again, of course, she puts it to her lips and kisses it before putting it in the back of her underwear drawer. Then she goes to Pinterest, to the page she started a few days ago for inspirational quotes about being single. She thinks of Alex's husband disappearing for hours and days on his benders, leaving his beautiful wife alone at home, scared and angry and unhappy. Josie recognizes that Alex has shown some vulnerability in sharing this with her and thinks that maybe Alex needs this today, needs to know that she has options. Josie scrolls through the memes, chooses one, and WhatsApps it to Alex. And the meme is just like a black square with the words, "A weak man can't love a strong woman. He won't know what to do with her." Underneath the image, she types in a row of love heart emojis interspersed with strong arm emojis, and she presses send. Alex looks at the image on the screen of her phone that Josie sent her yesterday, a black square with the words, "A weak man can't love a strong woman, he won't know what to do with her," in white capitals. Underneath are some emojis, and for a few seconds, Alex squints at it, trying to work out what it means and why Josie has sent it to her. And then she realizes that Josie is using memes and quotes to bolster her resolve to change her life, so she types in a thumbs up emoji and presses send. And she carries on, getting ready to leave the house with the kids. That's my only reaction. That is like quite literally the only thing that I could possibly do. The day after the really weird like meme situation, Josie just shows up on Alex's doorstep. And Josie's like, "Hey, let me in. Let's go ahead and do more podcast stuff." Alex is like, "I don't think we had anything scheduled for today." And Josie says, "Yeah, we didn't, but I'm here, so let's go ahead and do it." Oh, I mean, yeah, sure, I guess I'm not really doing anything. So they go back to the little studio and they start having some conversations. And this time, Josie is not here to talk about her life. Instead, she almost immediately is like, "Where's your husband at?" Jump scare. Editing Kaylee here. Wow, my hair looks frizzy in this lighting. If you're thinking to yourself, "Wow, Kaylee, that's like really annoying when you trade the mic from like one hand to another and it's like making really bad noises and I don't like that," shut the frick up. I don't like it either, okay? Lesson learned. I won't do that again. Don't comment it. I'm aware there's issues. I'm not a single woman, but this is a one-woman show, okay? This is a single woman operation. I make mistakes, okay? I know. Oh, he's just out. He's busy. And Josie's like, it's actually really, really shitty of him to just disappear on you after your birthday like that. Like, it's really crappy that he just drinks and, like, leaves you all the time. Like, that's really, really not very cool. Like, you deserve better than that. We deserve better than what our husbands are doing to us. And Alex gets, like, pretty defensive about this. She's like, he's a good guy. Like, I just knock it off. Like, I don't know why you're bringing this up. She pushes on. And she's like, Josie, she's like, I have to wonder what all of this was for at the end of the day, like the smallness of everything, all the quietness. And you don't know yet, Alex, you're still in the middle of it. Your kids, they still need you, but after they're gone, then what? Will you still want this, everything that you've built? Will you still want Nathan? I really don't know. I used to think that I couldn't live without him, but recently with all the the benders, I do sometimes wonder if life would be easier on my own. But when you think about Nathan dying, how does that make you feel? Really, inside? Like, does it make you feel sad, or does it make you feel free? Alex looks inside herself for something true to give to Josie. She pictures Nathan dead, the children fatherless, her future alone, and she says, no, it doesn't make me feel free. It makes me feel sad. There's a harsh silence, and Alex can feel judgment in it. Josie stares at her dispassionately. Oh, she says, and the atmosphere chills by a degree. Anyway, if you're busy, I'll let you get on. Oh, okay. Netflix cut, right? The weird thing. And on the Netflix, it's an interview with this couple that was honeymooning, and they're holding Fred, Josie's dog. And they're like, yeah, this really weird woman. I mean, we didn't know who she was. She just approached us and just begged us if we could, take her dog and take it to the pound for her because she wasn't able to take care of him anymore. And then she kissed him, and then she left. And it was the weirdest interaction that we've ever had in our entire lives. Like, we had no idea whatsoever who she was. It was only a few days later that we saw that it was her, that it was Josie Fair. But you kept the dog? They're like, oh my God, yeah, of course we did. I mean, look at him. Just look at him. Like, he's so cute. Okay. And then we cut back to later that evening when Josie returns home to Walter. And Walter's like, hey, WTF, like, what is going on? What are you doing? And she finally tells him that she's been hanging out with the woman that she met, like the birthday twin woman. And Walter's like, why didn't you tell me that sooner? Why have you been weird about it? And she's like, well, I didn't want you to think that I was being weird. Like, I didn't want you to think it was weird. Walter's right eye lifts slightly, and he turns back to his laptop with a sigh. Like I'd ever think you were weird, he says dryly. What is that supposed to mean? Oh, nothing, love. Nothing, obviously. No, Walter, seriously, what is that supposed to mean? Just say it. Walter slowly removes his reading glasses and rubs away the sweat from the bridge of his nose, and then he turns to her and says, Josie, leave it. I'm not going to leave it, Walter. If you've got something to say, then say it. No, I'm not doing this, Josie. I'm not going there. Suddenly, she finds herself striding across the room, propelled by pure adrenaline. She stops a foot from Walter and breathes in hard and then slaps him, ringingly, hideously hard across the face. I fucking hate you, she screams. I hate you. She stops recoiling slightly in the wake of her own violence. Walter blinks at her, touches the side of his face with his fingertips, and then slowly returns his glasses to his face and turns back to his computer. Oh, keep in mind, this is at like noon that this happens, okay? 2:30 that day, Alex is running around. She's like cashing a check or something, and Pat, Josie's mom, approaches her and she's like, hey, you're Alex, right? She's like, oh, hey, how's it going? What's up? Like, how are you doing? They say, fine, a little bit of small talk, and Pat asks, have you seen Josie lately? And she says, yeah, I saw her earlier today, actually. So that's still going on? The whole podcast thing? Yeah, it is. Alex pauses. She feels the need to dig in just a little. What do you think about it? I think it's weird, to be honest. If you didn't seem so completely normal, I'd be wondering what your motivation was. As it is, I can tell you're straight up. I Googled you and saw your credentials. You're proper, but this birthday twin thing, I don't get it. Yeah, it's not really so much about that now. It's evolving into something else. Something that's more about being women at a very particular age, on the cusp of menopause, not young but not quite old, questioning our choices, wondering about our paths, our futures, looking at similarities between us. Well, Josie, she's very different to me, too. That's for sure. Pat's mouth purses at the end of her sentence. You're polar opposites. You're the sort of woman I'd always assumed a daughter of mine would be, but, grit and talent and get up and go. Alex ignores the slight against Josie and says, what do you think of Walter? She told you, hasn't she, how they met? Alex nods. Pat eyes her disparagingly. Well then, what do you think? What do you think I think about Walter? A 45-year-old man hooking up with an 18-year-old girl? Disgusting. And God knows how long it had been going on before they told me about it. Have you met him? No, I've just seen him from a distance. Is he controlling? They're both as bad as each other, if you ask me. They're what you call a toxic combination, and those poor girls. Yeah, tell me about the girls. Josie doesn't mention them very much, just that one still lives at home and the other left home when she was 16. I couldn't help feeling that there was something that she wasn't telling me. Alex immediately sees that she has crossed a line. Pat's face closes down and she takes a step back. Probably best you talk to Josie about that sort of thing, she says. Not my place to say, but listen, good luck with all of it. You're gonna need it. Okay, so with that, Alex goes home that night and she shoots a message to Josie and she says, hey, I think it's important for me to meet Walter and to talk about Walter, or talk to Walter about this whole like podcast thing and interview him and, get some of his side of the story and whatnot. Josie tries to say no and push back on it, but Alex is persistent and she's like, hey, well, you guys can come over for dinner, okay? And I'll have Nathan here so, the boys can be boys and have their little talk too, so you can, have him come over for that reason or whatever. But I think it's really, really important. Okay. And Nathan, right, Alex's husband, hates this idea later when she brings it up to him, but he kind of owes her for being so forgiving of all of the shenanigans that he's been doing lately. And Josie pretty much like bullies Walter into getting a haircut and buying new clothes and whatnot for this dinner date thing going on, even though it's just going to be at like Alex's house. She's very, very rude about it to him, about how he needs to like look better and how he's like pretty much like not good enough to be doing all of this, but he has to. And he goes on to say, he's like, Jesus Christ, Jojo, it's her nickname. He says, chill out, I'll sort it, okay? Hair, clothes? Yes, hair, clothes, jeez. He turns off the television and brings his plate through to the kitchen. He has a smell about him, probably his dressing gown needing a wash. Also stale stubble and morning breath, the smell of decay, of defeat. It sits at the back of her throat and makes her feel enraged. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, Jojo, he says as he heads toward the bathroom for his morning shower. I really don't. One of the other things, too, that happens this day is that Alex asks her to bring a photo of the girls to the next interview. She's like, hey, I can't really talk to Aaron and Roxy. If you can bring like photos of them, though, like I would like to talk about the girls. Like I want to meet Roxy, or I want to meet Walter, and I want to talk about Roxy and Aaron. She's okay. And she kind of like comes to this like internal conclusion that it's finally time for her to tell the truth about her life. Right? Okay, interesting. So the next day on July 11th, when they have their next like little interview thing, she's showing these photos to Alex. And a lot of them, like the earlier ones that she brings in, the girls are cute. Just totally normal little chubby faced girls with these big smiles. But in the like very, very last photo is from right before Roxy left home, and she... like her eyes are like set really angry and she just looks very, very defiant even in the photo. And Aaron is super, super thin and like almost looks like malnourished. So that same day, right, July 11th, Walter has gone out and he's gotten this haircut and these new clothes. And so Josie makes him shepherd's pie. It's his favorite dinner as like a reward for doing all this stuff. And after dinner, she tells him, she's like, I'm going to tell Alex the truth about the girls. Like, I'm going to tell her everything. And she says, it's happening, Walter. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to tell Alex everything. I can't live like this anymore. We're moving on. I can't talk to you. You're insane. You're literally insane. I'm married to a fucking nutter. And I'm married to a fucking pedophile. Ugh. The air in the room freezes. For a second, neither Josie nor Walter breathes or moves. Finally, Walter speaks. I'm sorry? She wants to say it again, and then again and again, and she wants to pummel her fists against his chest and spit the word into his face until he's choking on it, but she can't. It's gone. She collects their half-eaten plates of food, scrapes some into a blender for Aaron, throws the rest into the bin. She purees the pie for Aaron, spoons into a bowl, and she puts the tray with a strawberry-flavored Mueller Light. What the heck is that? She leaves it outside of Aaron's room, her spare hand clamped over her mouth and nose to mask the smell. She's about to touch the door and then kiss her fingers, but she stops herself. She's starting to feel that Aaron is part of the problem here. She's starting to feel like Aaron is no longer on her side. Very last chapter in part number 1 on Friday, July 12th. It's the day of the dinner date thing that they're going to come over for. Nathan, Alex's husband, is going out with drinks with his buddies for a bit, but he promises that he'll be back in time for dinner. Josie and Walter show up. Of course, they're right on time. Nathan's running late. She tries to buy some time. There's like really, really awkward tension and commentary, and Josie making some snide remarks about Nathan not being there. Walter's really, really awkward. And pretty quickly, Alex figures out that Walter has no idea why he's there or like what's going on, or that this like podcast thing is even happening. Like, he has no idea that the podcast is happening. And she's like, and Josie says, "Oh, come on, Walter. I told you this." I don't think so. I told you that Alex does podcasts. Well, you might have mentioned it, but you didn't say she was doing one about you. Oh, it's not about me. It's about us being birthday twins, me and Alex. Alex feels an awkward cloud of dishonesty pass through the room. She'd been surprised by the fact that Walter had agreed to come along and essentially make himself part of the project, and thought that maybe he was more evolved than Josie had made him sound. But no, this was, Alex realized, a classic Josie maneuver. Like buying a dog without checking that it was really, like, it's a Pomchi, I guess, is like a special breed of dog, without making sure that it was really a Pomchi, or allowing herself to be groomed into a lifelong relationship by a man old enough to be her own father. A sort of blundering, thoughtless, aimless approach to life, a do the thing and worry about it later approach. And so now Alex had to go along with the subterfuge. Alex asks them how they met, and Walter says, "I knew JoJo from when she was a kid. I was friends with her mom at first, and then JoJo and I started hanging out a bit. She was too mature for people her age, Found them tedious. Comes from being an only child, I think. I was the same. Always preferred the company of grown-ups, and yeah, one thing led to another, and it turned out that somewhere along the line we'd fallen for each other. And I suppose it must look weird to some people, me being so much older than her, but it's never felt weird to us. Not once." And then she pushes for them to go outside, and she's like, "Hey, why don't you give Walter a tour of your podcast area?" Alex is a little off put by this. She's like, I guess I can. I wasn't really planning on it. And she's like, yeah, you should totally, like, take him out there real quick. So it's just the two of them, Alex and Walter, that go out to look at this. And then Josie stays behind, right? Takes him in here, and they're looking around, having a little bit of conversation. He's asking some technical questions about the setup and stuff. And then eventually he says, "She's tricky. She's a tricky one, my JoJo. She gives this impression, doesn't she, of being simple?" Simple? Yeah, like there's not much going on in her head. And if there's one thing I've learned about her over the years, it's that there's actually too much going on in her head. She's not who she makes herself out to be, not at all. And she's like, "Oh, okay. Do you want to expand on that one there? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you think she's a liar?" No, I don't think so, but for what it's worth from my side, JoJo's got what you might call an elastic relationship with the truth. Like, she doesn't really like the reality of, when she doesn't like the reality of things, she finds a reality she prefers. You mean everything she's been telling me about herself, about her life, is untrue? Well, no, I wouldn't go that far, but you can't believe everything she says. Just keep your wits about you. Just, Josie likes to control things, If she knew that I had been talking to you, she would feel like she was losing control of you. Of me? Yes, of you and the whole situation. Believe me, I know Josie better than everyone, and she's a control freak, and you don't even realize you're being controlled until it's too late. Oh, okay. So they go back inside after this, like, terribly awkward, weird dinner and tension and everything, and they finally leave. Nathan still has not returned home at all, by the way. Completely missing from this entire event. And when Alex goes upstairs to go to bed, she runs into her son, right? Her whatever son. He was just upstairs playing video games, hanging out during dinner time. And he's like, "Hey, why was that weird lady outside of your studio?" "The lady that was here?" "Yeah, the lady was here. She was standing outside of your studio when you were in there with that old man, like she was listening. I saw her through those doors. She looked really cross, like really, really cross." Oh, oh, oh. Cool. Cool. So we cut to, like, that evening over at Josie and Walter's house, and the whole entire walk home, it's silence, and she feels super sick, and she's really, really upset because she's like, "We brought over this champagne, and she didn't give us the champagne that we brought. Like, she doesn't think we're good enough for that." And she made, some generic pasta. She's like, "I was expecting some, like, really good dish, and I can't believe she, like," she's feeling cheated out of, like, this really delicious meal, and she's offended that, like, Nathan didn't show up for this dinner, and how everything went to crap, and how, Alex just dumped her roses in a cheap-looking vase and didn't trim the stems or fluff them out at all. Like, they deserved better. And, of course, the whole night was completely ruined by Nathan doing what he had done. Alex had been distracted and sharp, and she had not been a very good host, and it had not been a good evening. Oh, okay. And so when they get home, she confronts Walter about this, about him being like such an embarrassment to her and like ruining this whole like friendship thing between her and Alex. And he's like, that woman is not your friend. She's no friend of yours. She doesn't even like you. Josie feels the breath inside of her lungs freeze and stop. Of course she does. No, Josie, she doesn't. She's just trying to get inside that tiny weird brain of yours and work out what makes you tick. And then they have a screaming match about her being weird. And then her saying that I can't do this anymore. I can't keep it all locked inside. It's killing me, Walter. It's killing me. I need someone to know. I have to tell Alex. Like, I have to tell Alex about everything. Walter stares at her through tired, disappointed eyes, and he says slowly and coldly, you are really stupid, aren't you? Stupid as they get. At the sound of these words, Josie feels the swirling fragments of the universe slow down and thicken and then clear, and all that is left is red-hot fury that feels as if it's burning her from the inside out. She thinks of the things she heard Walter saying to Alex in the recording studio, poisoning her with his vile lies, and she knows that it is here, at last, the moment she's been waiting for. She feels certainty rip through her like a cyclone. So we're going into part 2. We're 40% of the way through the book, right? So part 1 took up such a ginormous chunk of time to get to this point of establishing everything. And then it's about to pick up like really, really fast. Lock in. We're going into this knowing that Josie has this like really, really weird obsession with Alex and her living this perfect life that maybe isn't actually as perfect as it seems on the surface. And that pretty much everybody in Josie's life is calling her a liar, right? Between Walter and her mom. But also, those are like objectively abusers, right? And people that really would have like treated her poorly throughout her entire life. And, you know, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to be basing your opinion or feedback on somebody based off of these two horrible influences in someone's life. So we're in this like weird spot. But Josie's obviously very creepy because she's like collecting and kissing these items and stealing from Alex's house and tucking them away. So what's the truth? What the hell is happening? I don't know. I guess we're about to find out. So we go into part 2 and it's the same day, same night actually. So, right, they went home at like, I don't know, 8 p.m. we'll say. 3 a.m. rolls around and somebody is like ringing the doorbell or like knocking on the door or whatever, and it wakes up Alex. And she's like, oh, I guess my husband finally decided to show up and like forgot his key or whatever. So she goes downstairs to let him in. But when she opens the door, on her doorstep is Josie. And Josie is bruised and bloodied and not looking very good. And she says that it was Walter, that like Walter had hit her. And she says, oh my God, come inside. Do you want me to call the cops? And she says, no, like I don't want to get anybody involved like that. And she says, okay, well, like I have a friend that does like a domestic violence women's shelter thing. I can call her real quick. Like they have a 24-hour hotline. Like we can get you set up with something. And she says, no. I just, to be honest, I just feel safest here. Like can I just stay here for the night? She says, yeah, of course. Okay. You know, takes her up to the guest room and gets her settled. And Josie has her dog Fred with her, of course. Okay, so Alex goes up there, gets her settled, and like immediately Alex feels weird about having her in the house, in the presence, in this whole situation. And she's like, really, Walter did that to her? Like, you know, yeah, he definitely gave me, he's obviously like a creep, and we've talked about this and stuff, but he just doesn't seem like somebody that would have been capable of doing something like this, like quite literally with how like old he is, right? She's like just, and she's thinking back to him giving her the warning earlier in the evening about, you know, Josie being manipulative or whatever. And Alex just feels weird, but she's also like, but I'm not going to sit here and act like, you know, somebody would lie to me about such a thing, or that I'm not going to believe a woman. Like that's a terrible thing to do. And she's just in this really, really awkward situation. So she has Josie just sleep in the guest room and she'll just deal with it in the morning. Instead, when she wakes up in the morning, Fred, the dog, had used the bathroom in the bedroom. So she has to clean that up and then takes Fred for a walk so Josie can just continue to sleep off all of the stuff that happened last night, and maybe they can talk about everything later. You know, she brings her like a change of clothes and stuff so she can get out of the stuff. So Alex is out on this walk, and she's out walking the dog, and halfway through she's feeling so uncomfortable having Josie be in her house alone with her children. And so she rushes home. And luckily when she gets there, her husband has miraculously returned. And there's some weird tension between Josie and the husband. Because when Nathan got home earlier and he saw Josie, she said, oh, well, look who decided to show up. And hold on, where did this go? And gives him crap for not coming home to his wife and how crappy he is for that. And he's like, hey, pretty sure that's like an issue between my wife and I to deal with. Like, I'm not sure why you're bringing this up. It's between Alex and I. And Josie says, well, not last night it wasn't. It was painful for all three of us, and look what it led to. Nathan looks aghast. I'm sorry, what? Josie sighs. The only way that I could persuade my husband to come here last night was by telling him that you were going to be here, i.e. another man, because he's a man's man, and he came under duress, and you didn't show up, and so he felt like a prize idiot, and it was a horrible evening, and he took it out on me. Oh, okay. So obviously there's bad vibes between the two of them, and just like awkward tension until Alex finally like returns home. 2 days later, it's July 14th. Josie is still staying at their house and has not made like any indication of leaving at all. And so Alex tries to push it a little bit, like tries to be a little gentle about it. Like, hey, you know, what's the plan? And she's like, I have no idea. And then Alex accidentally reveals that her sisters are visiting that weekend. And so then Josie's like, oh yeah, so like I can stay until then. I'll just stay until Saturday. I'll make sure I'm gone by then. Which it's a Sunday, so it's like literally the following week, so like an entire week that she's planning on staying at these people's house, pretty much like uninvited. But Alex feels like she can't really say no or push back on this, because then she would just be a bad person, and you know, Josie's just a little unsettling, and like maybe this isn't the type of person that you want to, you know, upset in any way. And to kind of maybe distract from this, Josie says that she wants to talk about her daughters on the podcast. And so on Monday, the following day, that's what they're planning on doing. But before they get into that, we have a cut to the Netflix documentary piece. And on this one, there are 3 like younger people that are being interviewed like at the same time, like they're all just kind of sitting there together. And the interviewer asks, who is Erased and how did you know them? Like, what's going on? What is all this about? And long story short, Erased is they call it glitch instead of Twitch streamer. Like, she plays video games online. And there was a night that they were watching her. She's really, really famous glitch streamer. And they didn't really know anything about her. Nobody knew her real name or anything. And then one day, in the middle of stream, she had gotten up and they heard a bunch of crazy noises in the background, like yelling and smashing and noises and everything. And when she got up, she never came back. And then eventually the stream cut. And everybody was like freaking out, like trying to track her down. And they spent so much time, like the online community were like messaging each other, trying to pinpoint her down and try to figure out and send help or anything they can. And when they finally were getting close to actually figuring out who she was, the news came out. Oh, and then it cuts back to present day. And Alex is coming back from dropping the kids off at school, and she's noting that Josie is still wearing her clothes, even though it's been days, and her clothes that she came in are clean. Josie is still actively choosing to wear Alex's clothes, and she's wearing makeup. And she's pretty sure that that's also like Alex's makeup. Like, this woman is literally just trying to like integrate entirely into this woman's life, and it's very, very uncomfortable. And also Alex notes how happy Josie seems. She just seems way too like content and cheery for somebody that would have been so horribly abused by their husband and then like disappeared, right? Or like she disappeared, you know what I mean? Ran away or whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of weird. She's a little nervous about all of this, and it's just like adding to this layer of just like uncomfortableness that's going on. And they're talking a bunch about the girls, you know, Erin being a little bit reclusive and kind of doing her own thing, and she talks about Roxy and how, you know, what happened with her like right before she disappeared. And so Josie is talking about how Roxy had this best friend named Brooke, and they were really, really close, and they hung out all of the time. And then they got into this really, really bad like physical fist fight thing. Roxy disappeared for 3 days afterward, and then all of a sudden she came back and told us that she was leaving, that she was just going to be gone, and she is like not returned since. Really the bigger or the biggest revelation is the fact that, like, you know, hey, well, like what did the girls fight over? Josie's like, turns out that Brooke was sleeping with Walter, Roxy's best friend. Her like 15-year-old, 16-year-old best friend was sleeping with my husband. And so they got into this like really, really terrible fight, and she was so upset about it that she ran away from home. And Alex is like baffled by this, and she's like, well, so what did you like do? And she's like, I didn't do anything. We were never gonna like be intimate ever again. And then I just like never confronted him. The first time that I ever confronted him about anything like was that night after coming home from dinner with you. Like that was the very first time I ever confronted Walter about what had happened with Brooke. And so Alex is like, so that's why like he beat you? And she says, yeah, that's exactly why. Oh, okay. Later that afternoon, they take a break and have some lunch, and Josie asks Alex if Nathan has ever hit her. She says, no, of course not. Like she kind of has like a visceral reaction to it, and then immediately feels bad because the way she said it was almost like, I'm too good for that. Like, of course I wouldn't date somebody that would hit me, and realizes how maybe like off-putting of answering it with that type of attitude was. So she like answers it again a little bit more gently. And then Josie, maybe catching the sass a little bit, is like, well, your husband does drink a lot though. And he goes on these like benders and just leaves you alone all the time. So like maybe things aren't so great then. Like maybe your husband also sucks. Oh, okay. Okay. On Tuesday, July 16th, the next morning, Alex is taking something out to the trash, and she runs into her neighbor, the same one that went to school with Aaron and Roxy. And she says, hey, do you remember a girl named Brooke? Like, do you remember Brooke's friend, or like Roxy's friend Brooke? And he's like, yeah. And tells her Brooke's last name. And so now that Alex has all of this information, she can go back and start like researching and like searching the internet for this girl and figuring out what happened to her. And turns out that Brooke had also gone missing about the same time that Roxy had ran away from home. It's like kind of weird. So then we cut to like the Netflix documentary interview with Roxy's aunt, talking about how it was the night after prom, how Brooke went to the dance and then parted way with her friends. And they have like video footage of her being at the bus stop and then nothing. Like she just like completely disappeared, and they don't know where she went after that. Alex, the same day, some other stuff that happened. She's like cleaning the room. The dog ended up having an accident on the bedding. And so she was changing that for Josie, and she had like tucked her hand like under the mattress to like tuck in the sheet, and found a bloody key that had like a little tag on it and then the number 6. It's like kind of weird. I'm not sure why Josie would have this under her bed, but she like puts it back under there and just kind of makes a mental note of it. And then there's also some discussion where when she was cleaning or running out or doing something, Josie had been poking around the house and had found like a pull-out bed in one of the other bedrooms. And internally she's like, oh, so I don't have to leave. When her sisters visit, I can just sleep in the study. I can sleep on this pull-out couch. And so when Alex comes home, she tells her this. Josie's like, oh yeah, I found the bed in the study so I can stay. Alex realizes that she has like lost all control of the situation. Like this has completely spiraled out of control. And also that like if she doesn't do this, that she's gonna lose the podcast, right? Like you have to kind of accommodate this woman and like play nice a little bit so that you can continue to get information out of her. And so she feels like she's in a rock and a hard place, and maybe starting to put her family, in a little bit of danger with this like objectively like crazy lady. And so she just kind of makes this promise to herself that they're going to try to finish this like as quickly as possible so that she can get Josie out of the house. And as she's thinking about all of this, she's at this little cafe trying to get space away from Josie and away from everything and thinking. It cuts to the Netflix documentary, and this time around it's an interview with this woman named Caitlin, who is a little bit younger than Josie is, right? A little bit younger than the two of them, so she's probably like 40, late 30s, whatever, who's known Josie. And she's like, yeah, I ran into her, and I told her I ran into her at work, right? I went to go and get like an alteration at her job, and she recognized me, and we got talking a little bit, and I told her about how I'm an actress, and she said that she had a perfect job for me. What are you talking about? And so we go back into the present time, and Alex is finally leaving the cafe and decides that she's going to make a stop by Josie's house to like see if Walter's there or maybe Aaron is there, like what's going on. And it looks lifeless. She's able to kind of see through the windows, and there's like a laptop on the table, but it just looks like nobody's home, and it's just kind of like weird. So she says, okay, noted, especially for how much of a homebody that Walter is, Josie said that she's never left before and she never leaves the house. And she said that Walter never leaves the house and he has like the same routine and he's always home. And so it's just weird. It's weird that the house would be empty. It's just very kind of like strange, but she goes home and they start the next interview. And in this interview, we find out that everything changed after Brooke disappeared. Josie goes on to tell us that, okay, this is going to be like a trigger warning, I guess. This entire book has been a trigger warning, but this particular chapter is like pretty heavy on like child abuse and stuff, right? After Brooke disappeared and like his relationship with this new 16-year-old stopped, and she said that she was no longer going to have like intercourse with him, and she had found this like illegal material on his laptop and that she was like disgusted by him. He began leaving her room at night and found out that he was going to Erin's room and abusing her every single night, and Josie never did anything about it. And so Alex is like, what the do you mean you didn't do anything about it? You knew that this was happening to your daughter and you didn't do anything. And she's like, well, she should have came to me. She knew where I was and she didn't talk to me about it. She didn't, yeah, pretty much that. She didn't talk to me about it. Instead, all she did was like regress and start asking for baby food. And then I just fed her baby food all the time. And so it was like 2 years ago that she had said that she wanted a dog, because I want a dog I can carry like a baby, because you ruined my babies, you ruined them. And so that's why she has Fred now. Okay. Yeah, so it goes on to like detail how she just like puts her earphones in and just like completely ignores the stuff that's happening. And so Alex confronts her and she says, I'm really sorry, Josie, I really am, but like I need to get this straight. You're telling me that in the aftermath of what happened with Walter and Brooke, your youngest daughter ran away from home, you withdrew conjugal favors from your husband, and that as a result of that, your husband started to visit your older teenage daughter in her bedroom every night to, you assume, sexually abuse her. Your daughter began to regress to the point of wanting to eat only baby food and stopped leaving her room entirely, and this has been going on for the past 5 years. Josie says, yes, that's correct. And she's like, and you haven't talked to your husband or your daughter about any of this? She says, yeah, it just happens. Okay, and your daughter, was she like restrained in any way? I mean, like, was she free to leave? She says, yes, she was free to leave. Okay. Okay. All right. Cool. So, hey, so before Friday night, Josie, when you and Walter had your fight, the night Walter beat you, when was the last time that you had seen Erin? She shrugs, sniffs, and wriggles slightly in her chair. About 6 months, maybe a year, about that. Not at all. Not once, not even going to the bathroom. She waits until I'm not in the house. She doesn't want to see me. But how do you know that? Well, she'd come and see me if she did, wouldn't she? She knows when I'm there. I feed her, I leave her food, and then she puts the empties outside of her room. And don't think for a minute that I don't want to see her, because I wanted to see her more than anything. But when something goes on for that long, well, it just gets harder and harder, doesn't it? Harder to turn back and do the right thing. I stopped at her door every day, twice, 3 times a day. I stopped and I touched the door and I made my hand like this. She forms it into a fist with knuckles, like I was going to knock. And I never did, Alex. I just never did. And I don't hate myself, because I hate myself so much. I hate that it took so long for me to stop it. And it took dinner at my house. Yeah, like I told you when we first met, it was all about breaking patterns, going to the fancy pub that night, getting rid of the denim, getting to know you, doing this. It was as if I had to break small patterns before I could get ready to break the big ones. And she's like, okay, so got it. Cool. I'm glad. So if Erin's been a recluse for like months and hasn't left her room or the house, so where did she go on Friday night? Like, which friend has she gone to stay with? Josie repositions herself. I have no idea. Somebody she went to school with? Oh, I doubt that. Nobody. No, probably just someone she knows from gaming, an online friend. And so Alex is like, you've got to be worried about her though, right? Like, you have no idea where she is or who she's with or anything? Like, no, she's fine. I'm not worried about it. Anywhere that she is now is better than the hell that she was living in before. Okay. Yeah, okay, I guess. Alex, if you can't tell, is starting to question Josie's story. Like, she's starting to question everything and just like really confused about what's happening. And on Thursday, 18 July, Alex is taking the kids to school. And so it's just Josie and Nathan in the house. And Josie has another like kind of confrontational thing with Nathan where she's just talking like mad crap to him about stuff until he eventually like storms out to go to work. And then after he slams the door, she's like, okay, I have 30 minutes until Alex gets home. And she goes snooping. In Nathan's pockets, she finds a baggie with some like white powder residue in it. and a hotel key. And so she like collects this for her own personal use, is what it is like noted as in the book. Okay. And then when Alex returns, Josie's like, hey, 2 days from now, like when your sisters get here on Saturday, like I'll go to my mom's house. So, oh, great. Okay, yeah. So then we have 2 days to do everything we can to try to finish the podcast and get everything, all wrapped up. And then it cuts to the like Netflix documentary piece of it. And Josie it's literally just the podcast. I hate the way that this is like chopped up. The more and more I'm talking about it and trying to like narrate this to you, the more I'm like, this is so unnecessary. The way that this is cut. It's like adding some weird like cinematography to a book that is like not needed. What does the addition, I guess the addition of the Netflix part is so we can get like the future people, like that interview with Caitlin or like, Brooke's aunt or these people that like adopted the dog and stuff. But I feel like, I don't know. I just don't like it. Anyway, it's the interview, one of their like last sessions and stuff. And Josie is talking about how Walter had gotten a bad haircut on purpose and got these ugly clothes to embarrass her and how it was like all intentional. And that he got like so angry because of Nathan's absence that like when they got home, he was so angry and she was angry. And so then she called him out for abusing Aaron. And then he got so upset with her that he hit her with like a remote and then like went out to the living room and acted like nothing happened. And so then she collected her dog and she finally gave her the courage to go into Aaron's room and get her, and then they left. Okay. I mean, that's compelling. Like that's, hoorah, strong girl, leaving a situation. But if you left my house at 10 p.m., it's like a 15-minute walk to your house, and you came back at 3 a.m., and you're saying that you guys fought like right when you got home, then there's like a couple hours like missing. So like what happened in those couple of hours? She's like, oh, you don't believe me? Like you don't believe what I'm telling you? And she's like, no, I'm saying I do, but like people who listen to this podcast, they're going to try to find like plot holes and they're going to pick apart everything that you say. And so I just want to make sure that we're being like clear with everything that you're saying. And Josie's like, well, it didn't happen when we got home. I didn't say that. It happened when Walter got out of bed, like he does nearly every night, like I told you. Like we went to bed, and then I confronted him for like being a pervert to Aaron when he got out of bed late at night, and then that's when it all happened. And then I came here. So you were in bed when he assaulted you? Yeah, I was. So you would have been in your pajamas? Yeah, but when you came here, you were wearing your dress, the lovely dress. Yeah, I wanted to put it back on. I wasn't going to walk halfway across the town in my pajamas, but the dress had blood on it. Why would the dress have blood on it if you weren't wearing it during the attack? And then again, she's like, oh, so you're trying to call me a liar? And they had this like whole entire back and forth. And then she's like, okay, fine. Okay, whatever. So what about Aaron? Like where did Erin go when you came over here? Like, why didn't you bring her with you? How do you know where she is? How do you know that she's safe? She's fine, Alex. She's fine. She can take care of herself. But you said she can't. Like, you said that you've been feeding her baby food. You said... Alex flinches as Josie pulls off her headphones and slams them on the tabletop. I'm trying to tell you my story, Alex, my truth. And you seem to be trying to make it into something it isn't. So either you want my story or you don't. You can't have it both ways. You just can't. Okay. Oh, okay. Chapter 30, July 20th. Josie wakes up knowing that this is the last day that she's going to be at Alex's house. And she's like reflecting on, you know, the night before and how they had this like really homey, home-cooked meal. And she finally felt like a family and it was all cool. And so she finally puts her clothes on. She like stops wearing Alex's that she's been wearing for the last like week and a couple days or whatever. And Alex is like, oh my God, you're wearing your clothes. She's like, yeah, I am. And she tells Alex that she's going to her mom's house. She steps outside and she like feels her purse for all the money that she's been collecting. She's been going to like the ATM and pulling out like chunks of money at a time. Feels that. And then she puts on a pair of sunglasses that she stole, a pair of sunglasses from Alex. And then we go into part 3 of the book. And this is what I mean about this, like going a little bit quicker. Like these parts are going to start flying through. This is still July 20th. The second that like Josie steps out of the house and like she's not going to be coming back, Alex can feel like a weight lifted from the house. Like everything feels normal again. And it doesn't feel this like really dark, heavy, terrible presence. And her sisters are coming over that evening. Nathan is at work, and so she shoots a message to Nathan reminding him about her sisters coming and like, hey, you know, they're pretty judgy and like I want you to come home and celebrate with us. And like, yeah, I know you said that you were going to go out with your friends, but if you can come home early tonight, you know, we can we can get physical, we can do some stuff. Meanwhile, cut to, he's out drinking with his friends, and Josie is spying on him from like the restaurant next door, like overhearing their conversations and like watching him through the night about like him partying with his friends. She's not going to her mother's house. She instead went straight over here to like start stalking Nathan as he like goes through town to go and hang out with his buddies, and gets like a table kind of near behind them or whatever to like overhear him talking to them about everything. And then she texts a woman named Caitlin, and Caitlin says she'll be there in 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, this like really, really beautiful woman approaches the table with all these guys, Nathan and his friends, and sits down right next to them and, chats them up and starts talking about how she's, going to meet with her friend and if she can just sit with them for a little bit. And after like 20 minutes or so of her just like sitting there BSing, she checks her phone and like real dramatically puts it down. And she's like, ugh, my friend bailed on me. Can I just party with you guys tonight? And all the guys say, yeah, of course, because she's like a little cute hot thing, you know what I mean? How are you going to say no to that? And so she gets situated, and then Josie texts her and says, hey, let me know when you're done. Oh, this isn't good. This isn't good. And we cut to like Alex's point of view that night. She's like continually texting Nathan, and like he's not responding to her at all. And she's just embarrassed, right? Her sisters, like I said, her sisters and her like nieces and nephew and stuff are there. And she just like feels wildly uncomfortable with all of this. And she's really pissed off that he's like bailing on her again. And that night when she's going to bed, she's like taking her shoes off or putting her shoes away. And she sees a little white baggie and a hotel room key and a little Post-it note that says Daisy. And she's like, oh my God, my husband is like doing drugs and cheating on me. Like, I'm so foolish. I sat here and like told him that like we would get intimate if he came home tonight. And obviously he doesn't need me to do that. Like, obviously, like I'm so foolish. Like, I really believe that he was like a good man with a drinking problem, but he's actually like a piece of crap. Like, this is so embarrassing. This is so terrible. And like spirals a little bit. Like, she's just like absolutely freaking humiliated by this and calls him, texts him. She doesn't get anything. And eventually she calls his friend that they were out drinking with, and his buddy's like, yeah, we left him at 1 a.m., but he was alone. Alex does not believe him, but she says, okay. And in the morning, he still has not returned. So Alex's sisters, knowing his drinking problem, they're like, hey, let's just like hang out. Like, we'll wait until afternoon and we'll see if he comes home before we like start getting worried about anything. Hours go by. It's like 4 p.m. and there's still no sign of him. And so she walks to Gio's house, his friend's house, and confronts him. And he finally mentions Caitlin about how this like girl had showed up and stuff and how the guys had left him with her. But like, he's a good guy and he wouldn't do anything, and he's never done anything and never flirted and whatever. And, we just wanted to go home. And she said that she would make sure he got home safe. And like, he talked about you all night. Like, it's not that kind of guy. It's not like that. It's not like that. She's all like pissed off and, calls BS on this and stuff. But there's no sign of him at all for like all of Sunday. Monday rolls around. And then finally she gets a call from a hotel, right? She misses it at first. And so then she Googles the number, and it's a hotel phone, and she's like, oh my God, thank God. Like, okay, maybe he just had like literally the worst bender of his entire life, and he finally like woke up and came to, and he's calling me back. It's not him. The hotel says, hey, Mrs. Summers, your husband was here and he's gone now, but the room is destroyed and the credit card on file isn't working, and we're gonna need to charge somebody for this. Like, he's not picking up the phone when we call him, but it would be really appreciated if you could like pay for the damages. Like, it's pretty extensive. And Alex says, damages in a hotel room? No. Okay, has anybody cleaned the room yet? No. Okay, well, I'm gonna come over soon. I know it's kind of weird, but my husband, he's missing, and maybe there's something in the room that'll let us know like where he is or what's happening. Hotel's like, okay, I mean, I guess, yeah, if you want to come on over. She does. She goes into the hotel room, and it's like trashed, right? There's like stuff turned over, the curtains ripped off the wall. There's like McDonald's bags and stuff everywhere. There's a woman's pair of like lacy underwear, and just the smell of a woman is in the room really bad. And it's just like not looking very good, but there's no sign of him like anywhere or any of his stuff, whatever, like no sign at all. And so she says, hey, can you look at like the security footage? Like, can we see what happened? Sees him walk into the hotel room, drunk off his ass, like falling over basically, and sees him enter the hotel room with who we know to be Caitlin, this like really, really beautiful blonde woman. And then shortly after, he like stumbles out and gets into a car. And it's noted that like when he opens the car door, he like gets in pretty excitedly, but then he looks in and sees a driver and like steps back a little bit and is surprised. have a little bit of a discussion, and then he gets in the car and then it drives off. And so they try to like rewind it a little bit so that they can get the license plate off of the vehicle. And she's like, okay, so that's good to know. And then she asks if they can keep watching the footage for when the woman leaves the room. And it's like shortly after. And she's still put together. Like, it doesn't look like they had just done anything. Like, the woman's still wearing her like white jeans and her hair is still done really nicely. You know what I mean? It doesn't really look like they got physical at all. So she's like, okay, I mean, that's something. But then she sees the woman turn a little bit and there's this like huge cut on her cheek. And so then she's like, okay, I'm going to pretend that I didn't see that part of that. Now she has this like car information, or at least the license plate. And then she says, hey, I know probably can't ask this, but was this room like already booked? What's going on here? Who booked the room, the name, the card, like what's going on? So it was booked under his name, and it had been booked for like 2 whole days, and it had been booked earlier in the week. And the card on file is for an Erin Fair. Erin Fair, Josie's daughter. Okay. Cut to the Netflix documentary, and Alex is interviewing Caitlin, who talks about the plan. Josie had hired her for £1,000 to get Nathan into this like particular hotel room and to make it look like they had had sex. And when she met him, she felt so guilty about it because all he was talking about was his wife. And it was like a running joke all night between him and his buddies about how he was so excited to get home that night because he was going to get laid. And he was so obsessed with her and how beautiful she was and all this other stuff. And she's like, I felt really, really guilty about it, but I needed $1,000. And obviously I had no idea that all of this stuff was going to happen. Okay. So knowing this, the whole Erin thing, Alex rushes to go to Pat's house, right? Josie's mom's house. Pat's not there. She's like out of the country on a trip. And Josie's not there. And the neighbor says that they haven't seen Josie in years and they have no idea what she's talking about. And so on the way home, she shoots an email to a woman that she had interviewed previously for that like all woman podcast. And apparently she's like some high up police detective lady. And she says, hey, I have this license plate and the make and model of this car. Can you do me a favor and like look it up? Like I need some information. You know, my husband's kind of missing, and kind of lays out a little bit of what's going on. And the detective gets back to her pretty shortly and tells her that the car is registered, that the car was a rental, and that Erin Fair had paid for the rental. Alex again spirals out of control, and this time she calls the cops and she reports that her husband is missing. And then we go back to the Netflix documentary, and it's an interview with a detective, or 2 detectives actually, and they're talking about how they didn't really take Nathan's disappearance seriously at first because it was just like messy people being messy. You know, he has a problem. He goes on benders for days at a time, like whatever. We didn't really take it seriously. But then we got another phone call, an anonymous call from a payphone in Bristol. And then the audio recording plays of this police call. Hi, I need to report a missing person. It's my friend Erin Fair and her father, Walter Fair. They live at 43A Manor Park Road, NW6. I haven't heard from either of them in a long time, not since like over a week ago. And Erin has special needs and her father's quite elderly, and they usually never leave the house. And I wondered if someone could go and check up on them for me, please. I'm really worried about them. The camera goes back to the detectives. It took a few hours for us to put the 2 reports together, the 2 mentions of the same name in the same day, Erin Fair. And then we did, and it was like, pow. We sent a patrol car to Manor Park Road, and, well, you know exactly what happened after that. A gruesome discovery was made on Monday night in a Kilburn back street. Police and detective from Kentish Town Police Station went to a flat on the ground floor of a house in Manor Park Road after receiving an anonymous phone call from a woman in Bristol who was worried about not having heard from her friend for a while. Unable to establish the whereabouts of Erin Fair and her father, and talking to the neighbors who told of loud screams and shouting late on a Friday night more than a week before, police entered the property by force. Immediately, they were aware of a terrible smell emanating from somewhere in the flat, and a few minutes later, the decomposing remains of Walter Fair, 72, were discovered in the bathtub. He had been badly beaten and left with his arms and legs tied together. Police then found Mr. Fair's daughter, Erin Fair, 23, tied up to a wooden child's chair in a storage cupboard in the hallway. The chair had been customized with leather straps and leg ties. She too had been beaten and was first assumed to be dead, but after showing signs of life, was rushed to a hospital where she is now in intensive care in a coma. According to neighbors, the Fair family had not been seen for a while, and and Josie Fair, Walter's wife, has not been traced since the discovery was made. Police are currently investigating her disappearance and also the disappearance of a local man, Nathan Summer, who was loosely acquainted with the Fair family and who was last seen outside of a hotel room in central London in the early hours of Sunday morning, getting into a car hired using the card held by Mrs. Fair's daughter, Erin. Mr. Summers' wife, the popular podcaster Alex Summer, had recently been recording a podcast with Josie Fair, and Mrs. Fair had been a house guest of the Summers for a week prior to Mr. Summers' disappearance, claiming to have been a victim of domestic abuse at the hands of her husband. Neighbors say the Fair family kept to themselves and were generally very quiet. It's been 2 days since the discovery of Walter and Erin, and there is still no sign of Nathan or Josie anywhere. And the police call Alex to come to the police station to identify some items. And they have the hand soap, the Nespresso pod, the bracelet, a bunch of other random stuff. There's a teaspoon and some other things that Erin had stolen, or Josie, sorry, I'm getting so mixed up, that Josie had stolen from Alex's house. But then there's also some other items that she hasn't seen before. And she tells them that they're not hers. There's a hair scrunchie made of pink satin, a rubberized phone case with gems arranged into flowers and glued on the back, an empty Hubba Bubba container, a single silver earring with a crucifix hanging from it, and a scrunched up paper napkin with pink smudges on it, and a large silk flower attached to a circle of elastic. And then there's a picture as well of some little girls. And Alex is I don't know whose stuff this is, but it's not mine. And the girls in that photo are not Erin and Roxy. And she looks closer and she's but she looks really familiar. The one little girl right there in the middle. She realizes that it's Brooke Ripley, Roxy's best friend that she got in that fight with that we've talked about pretty briefly, that had that relationship with Walter or whatever. So she looks it up on Facebook and she pulls up these photos and she's this is who I think that is in that photo. And then in the prom picture, she's wearing a corsage, which is what is also in this pile of evidence. The rose on the little silk ribbon thing is the same corsage that she was wearing in this prom picture. And Alex goes to leave with this information. She's I'm sorry, I don't have any more, but I think that's who it is. This is her name, blah, blah, blah. And then when she goes to leave, Alex remembers that bloody key that Josie had under the mattress, and it's still there. And so she gets it and she brings it to the cops because she's I don't know what exactly this is to, but here you go. Sorry, I didn't think of it any sooner. And we go back to the Netflix documentary and Caitlin's talking about how the rest of the night had went. Once she had gotten Nathan to the hotel room, and pretty much the whole time he was just asking where Alex was, and Caitlin had lied to him that Alex was waiting for him at the hotel, and then she wouldn't let him leave, and so he started throwing a fit and throwing stuff everywhere, and he didn't hurt her. He had accidentally hit her in the face with something that he was throwing, but it wasn't targeted toward her, you know what I mean? He wasn't being violent toward her. It was just in general. And then after that, she just let him leave. And then that's when Josie had showed up to pick him up and stuff. This is, the next day. The cops call Alex and they say, hey, guess who just walked into the station and they want to see you? And it's Roxy. Roxy has showed up and the police, they tell her hey, we're still looking for your mom. She killed your dad and she hurt your sister really badly. And they tell her about how Erin's credit card had paid for the car that had picked up this guy that had gone missing. And she said, my sister's credit card? You think my sister bought this thing for them, or for this guy, or rented this car for this guy in this hotel room for this guy? And they're no, we don't think your sister did it. We think your mom did, but do you know why your sister would have that money? There's a lot of money in that bank account. She's yeah, she's famous on Glitch. She's a gaming streamer person. And they're what the heck are you talking about? She's yeah, that's literally what she does. Noted. Kind of weird. And also, we literally can't find your mom anywhere. Is there anywhere in maybe your childhood that she would have looked favorably upon? We've sat and we've listened to all of these podcast interview things that your mom had with this Alex Summers woman, and she talked really, really positively about the past. Is there some place that you guys used to go that maybe we could look for her at? And Roxy doesn't have any positive childhood memories, but she's maybe the Lake District. We used to go there every summer and she would always talk about it, but that's the most that I could really think of. And then they make a comment about how Walter, her father, had beat the mom. And Roxy's like, that did not happen. And they show her the photos that like Alex had taken that night, like of Josie's face, because she had taken it for like evidence at the time. And Roxy's like even more surprised to hear about her mom having a friend than anything, and then even more surprised to hear about the whole podcast. And she's like, well, I need to meet this lady, and I need to hear about all this shit that gets said on this on the podcast and about my dad, because nothing that you're saying is like adding up. And they're like, yeah, I'm just like really concerned about you too, because on the podcast, she was talking about all the abuse and stuff that happened at your house, and how your dad would abuse you guys, and abuse Brooke, and we're looking into that too. We're trying to figure out what he did to Brooke. She's like, what the fuck are you talking about, what he did to Brooke? He's like, yeah, they had their relationship, and and then now he's like, started like abusing your sister, and your mom had said in the podcast that he would go to your sister's room every night. And Roxy's like, he would go to her room every night to be a part of her streaming thing. He had a character that he would play on her streams. His name was Pops. Like, that was one of the main reasons that her videos were so popular, was like her dynamic with our dad. Like, none of anything that you're saying makes any sense. Like, that is not my dad. That is not what happened. Oh, shit. And so Roxy meets with Alex at this cafe to talk a little bit and to maybe try to figure out, like, what was all said on the podcast and to, like, kind of set it straight. And immediately, after, like, asking one question, Alex is like, hey, just kidding. I know we're in this cafe right now, but, like, would you come to my house and say this on the podcast? Like, I want to record this. You're just doing it for the content, which is kind of shitty of you. But, like, also, I mean, get your bag, I guess, but I feel like we're just capitalizing in places where we shouldn't be. So they go to the podcast thing, and Roxy, like, opens up about whatever. The first thing she opens up about is Brooke, and she's like, that's not what happened. That was my first girlfriend, actually. Like, her and I were really, really close, and we dated for a while, and Erin, my sister, was the only one that knew the truth. Like, we didn't want to tell my mom and dad, and she always thought that my mom hated her, like, so much. She always talked about how she would, like, stare at her with, like, daggers and stuff. And I ran away and I wanted Brooke to come with me, and she didn't want to. And it turns out when they had gotten, like, in the fight or whatever, and she had punched Brooke at school, it was because somebody had said that Brooke made fun of Erin, and so then Roxy had just, like, punched her and kind of, like, on a whim. But that Brooke actually hadn't said anything and hadn't been mean to her sister, and felt really bad about it, and then tried to run away with her, and then that didn't work out. And so then she came back and decided that, like, she was going to run away for good, and how she never wanted to see her family again. Her mom was just so crappy. Like, she couldn't deal with anything that our dad had to do with either of us. She was so jealous of him, of the fact that we loved him. She was so sick with it, sick in the head. The little podcast session, this little Netflix excerpt, ends with Alex saying, so you running away from home, it was nothing to do with your father and Brooke? There was nothing going on? Erin didn't tell you that she'd heard them having sex? None of that actually happened? Roxy raises her gaze to the camera and shakes her head. I've never heard so much bullshit in my life. And so later that night, they still haven't figured out what that key is for, that weird bloody key that Alex gave to the cops. And now she's like, well, I have Alex here. Alex is spending the night at her house. She's, like, not from the area. She's just, like, came into town for this stuff. And she's like, hey, do you know what this key, it says 6 on it. Do you have any idea? You guys, like, have a shed or storage unit or something? She's like, there's, like, a garage in the back area. It might be to that. And they say, okay, noted. And then it goes again to the Netflix documentary. And this time Alex is interviewing a couple who stayed at a Lake District vacation home next to Josie's. And they said that she was obviously, like, very private and wanted privacy. And they had been on the back porch one time and, like, kind of, like, cheersed at each other across the way. But that was the extent. And then that after a few days, they had stopped seeing her, like, even though her car was still there. And she had booked, this gets revealed in, like, a chapter or two, but she had booked the thing for, like, 2 full weeks. And they had only seen her for the first couple of days. And then in the next day, she gets a phone call from none other than Pat, Josie's mom. And she says, Roxy's been telling me about your podcast, about the things that Josie told you. And I just think, Alex, for the sake of balance and truth, that I should come in and talk to you and tell you my side of the story, because I know you think I was probably a bad mother in many ways, and I was, but honestly, you need to understand Josie properly and what she's really like before you can even hope to make any sense about what's going on. Alex asks her if she can come now, and Pat is on her way. And she goes on to say that she definitely was not ready to be a mother when she had Josie. And yeah, she probably gave her too much freedom and, had her be responsible for too much stuff. But, kids got to mess up if you're going to learn, and blah, blah, blah. And goes on to talk about how, like, Josie had always just had this dark cloud around her. And she was just so angry and needy, and she could never have enough attention from Pat. Always needed something, always wanted her to be around, was like glued to her side, and was just like exhausting. And anytime that Pat had a boyfriend or a partner or like anybody, how much that Josie would like torture them and make fun of them. And she even made a voodoo doll at one point for one of the guys just to mess with them, and how she scared off like literally all of her freaking boyfriends. And then I started seeing Walter. Alex cuts in and she says, "I'm sorry?" I started dating Walter when Josie was about 13. There's a prolonged silence. Josie didn't tell me that. Well, no, of course she didn't, because she only told you what she wanted you to know, what suited her weird narrative. And that's exactly why I'm talking to you, you see, because Josie didn't tell you a lot of the things. And Josie's run off letting the whole world think that her husband was a monster and that he groomed her and that he abused his children. And the world needs to know that's rubbish. You need to know that's rubbish. Walter Fair was far from perfect. He was quite controlling, liked things done his way. He was quite full of himself, yes, and obviously I knew that it was wrong that we were having an affair behind his wife's back. Of course I knew that, but he was a loving man, a real man. He just wanted to love and be loved. He wanted a quiet life, and what we had was very real, very intense, and I was prepared to wait it out until he found the right time to leave his wife. At first, Josie was very resistant to him, as she was with all of my boyfriends, but then as she got older, she seemed to become fixated on him. She would try to divert his attention away from me and onto herself, and blah blah blah. She was completely not expecting any of it. And then when Josie turned 18, they had told her about their relationship, and she was like disgusted by all of this, and she was just kind of excited for Josie to be out of her hair and away from her. And so Alex asks, "So in your opinion, you don't think that Walter groomed Josie? Groom her? You mean manipulate her into a relationship with him?" "No, I don't think so. I think she saw him, she wanted him, she got him. She didn't care who she hurt. She never cared who she hurt. And this is a terrible thing to say about your own child, and obviously I've been far from perfect myself, but I really think Josie has a heart of stone, a heart of pure stone." And so Alex, after Pat leaves, she goes inside, and her mom has come up, like her mom and her sisters and stuff are like kind of rotating through, helping her take care of the kids and like be supportive. Her mom is there, and she just goes inside after this conversation, and she's like, "Mom, I think he's dead. Like, I think Nathan's dead." Oh. We cut to the Netflix documentary, and we're back with the couple that have Fred, that like adopted the dog and stuff. And they're like, "Yeah, we had no idea. We were on our honeymoon. We weren't watching the news. We weren't watching anything. But when we started sending pictures of Fred to our friends and, telling them about this like crazy story about this lady and this dog, they said that she's probably the lady that the cops are looking for." And they're like, "What lady are you talking about?" And that's how they found out. So a couple days after Josie gave them the dog, they look at the news and realize that that's who it is. And so then they called the cops and they said like, "Hey, this woman in this area, this is like, she's in Lake District, like this is the general area of like where we ran into her," and blah blah blah. So then they started this like street to street, house to house investigation, but it wasn't until very late on Sunday that we had a breakthrough. A family dining in a restaurant in the village told us that a woman matching Josie's appearance with a small dog had been staying in their lodge park, and they said that she had arrived the previous Sunday in the middle of the day and was gone by Thursday morning. And so at this like lakeside park thing, they began doing like they have like a water rescue team, and there's like the Netflix documentary has like the scenes of the water rescue happening, or at least like, you know what I mean, like the cinematic version of all of that happening. In that night, Roxy and Alex are on the phone, and she's asking how like Aaron is doing, and Aaron is still in the coma, but she's supposed to be waking up pretty soon. And she apologizes to Alex for like that she has to hear all of this and has to like know all of this crazy information about her like terrible family. And kind of like, I guess as that was happening, or the cops are having this separate conversation, right? That's like an entirely separate thing. When Alex and Roxy are having this conversation after they hang up that night on, talking about how awkward her mom is and how weird this whole situation is, she's kind of running through everything in her mind, right? Alex is. And she's like remembering a conversation that she and Josie had, where Josie had asked her how her and Nathan met. And so we get the like interview from June, right? So like a month ago or whatever, where she is telling the story about how they had met. And they had met at dry cleaners, just kind of like randomly. They were like picking up shirts at the same time. And then they ended up going to like a pub afterwards, and then like it was kind of the rest is history and stuff. And they have a little bit of back and forth discussion after this like reveal where Josie is asking Alex, do you still love him? Like the day that you met him in the dry cleaners, like when you didn't know anything about him. And she says, yeah, it's a different kind of love, but yes, I do. And Josie asks her, you don't think that your life would be better if you were on your own? No, I don't. And yet you call yourself a feminist? Yes, I do, and I am. You can be happily married and a feminist. I don't think so. I think that you can only be a feminist if you're single. And then there's like really kind of awkward back and forth. And then Josie says, you have to be free in order to be in control, Alex. You have to be free, no baggage, a clean break. Like your friend Marie said on one of your podcasts. Do you remember what she said about clean? You remember what she said about clean breaks? And then it cuts to that like interview where she was talking about how death is the only like clean break that you can really have. So after this conversation with Roxy, she's like kind of reflecting on everything and running through, and she's thinking about Nathan and how they met, and that jogs her memory of a conversation that her and Josie had had a while ago about where she had told Josie about how they had met. And after like listening to this, she realizes that that's the like manifesto basically, was Josie decided that Nathan was holding her back and that she was giving her a clean break and like thought she was doing her a favor and like was going to off her husband and stuff. And she's realizing that like this is her fault because she like showed a weakness in her marriage or made a comment, like even the small one about maybe her life would have been better or would be better without him, or how she thinks about it sometimes, and realizes that that was like all the ammunition that this like insane person needed to kill Nathan. At around the same time that she like has this at the same time that she's having this revelation and like freaking out, her phone starts ringing and it's the police. And there's never a good call that you get from the police at 1 a.m. She already knows what it is. And it is the police found Nathan's body at the bottom of the lake that they were doing the search for, or the search at. And on the drive there, gets a like voice message from Josie 5 minutes before Alex Summer was notified about the discovery of her husband's body. Alex, hi, it's me. I'm not sure what to say. I don't know what happened, what I was thinking. It wasn't my intention, none of it. The whole thing, I was trying to be helpful. I was trying to show you how much better your life could be without him. I was just going to keep him for a few days and then leave him somewhere to find his own way back to you, but it all went wrong. It's a disaster. It makes me look like I'm evil, but I'm not. You know I'm not, Alex. That's why I wanted to share my story with you, because we're alike, you and I. We're both idealized wives with disappointing husbands. We've both been living in the shadows of awful men who chose us because of what we represented and not for who we were. We both had more to give and more to offer, and now Aaron will wake up and say things about me too, and those things won't be true, Alex. You have to believe that. They won't be true. Everything I told you was the truth. We know that. You and me. You're the only person in the world that I can trust to know the real me, Alex. Please tell the world that I'm not a bad person, that I'm just a normal person coping with bad things, not just the bad things I told you about, but other things. The thing I wanted to tell you about, the real end of the story, the darkest, worst thing of it all, but I lost my nerve. I couldn't do it, and I wish I had, because of this stupid mistake with Nathan, I've blown it, and now nobody will believe me anyway. So please don't believe all the things you hear. I'm sorry, Alex. I really, truly am. Goodbye. And she goes on to find her husband and whatnot. And then our narrative kind of shifts, and we're in the hospital with Aaron and Roxy and Pat. And Aaron wakes up from her coma, and it's this really almost like a cute interaction between the three of them, right? It's very heartfelt. It's all very friendly. And they try to get her caught up really quickly on everything that happened and how her community, had like a whole hashtag for her to try to find out, where she was and to try to help her and all this other stuff. And how, mom really, really hurt dad. And there's some stuff there. And she's like, I feel so funny and I'm really, really hungry. And Roxy's like, oh yeah, soft foods, right? She says, yeah. And Roxy and the grandma keep trying to talk to her and just like babble about like everything until like the dark wave of remembering comes back, right? Until it all actually truly registers to Aaron's, half awake comatose brain of the tragedy of everything. And it finally does. And it finally hits, and she starts like freaking out and crying and asking like what happened. And Roxy says, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, okay? I'm going to tell you word for word. And then we cut back to our Netflix original series. The screen flicks to blurry footage of a garage door and then pans across small London mews. The text beneath says, Shortland Mews, London, NW6, 30 July 2019. The audio is a crackly recording of a police phone call. We're approaching the garage now with Mr. Roberts, the owner of the block. Mr. Roberts is opening the main gates and we're getting ready to go in. The footage shows a hand with a key in it going toward a large rusty padlock. The key has a tag attached to it with the number 6 written on it. The key turns slowly and the click of the lock is magnified on the audio. The film slows down and the screen goes black. The screen changes to footage of a BBC news report. A newsreader announces the headlines as the familiar BBC theme music fades out. Good evening. Earlier today, around 11:30 a.m., the human remains of a young woman were discovered in the boot of a car in a garage in Kilburn, London, by the Metropolitan Police. They are believed to be those of Brooke Ripley, the young woman who went missing from her school prom in June of 2014. The garage was leased by Walter Fair, the 72-year-old man found murdered earlier this week in his flat, while his adult daughter, Erin Fair, was found barely alive and tied to a child's chair in a cupboard. Erin, 23 years old, had last been seen by friends online whilst gaming in the early hours of Saturday, the 13th of July. A hunt for her had been carried out by her legion of online followers after they had heard something strange happening during her last live stream, and a global campaign was ongoing to find out what had happened to her. She is told of surviving her ordeal by sucking on the strands of a floor mop in a bucket of dirty water left on a shelf in the cupboard where she had been abandoned. Meanwhile, Josie Fair, Erin's mother, is being sought in connection with a suspicious death of Nathan Summer, the London estate agent found in the shallow waters of Lake Windermere early yesterday morning. Anyone with any information about Josie Fair or her current whereabouts are urged to contact London Metropolitan Police at the first possible opportunity. A new scene of the Netflix original series. A screen shows Roxy Fair sitting on the same sofa in the previous scenes, but this time Erin is sitting next to her. Erin wears her hair long and parted down the middle. She has on a baseball cap with her gaming logo embroidered on it and a matching t-shirt. And the text beneath reads Roxy and Erin Fair. Then, new text appears below, typed letter by letter. Erin Fair was recently diagnosed as having ASD. To compensate for living with her disorder in a toxic and dysfunctional environment, she developed various habits and coping mechanisms. These include talking in a very soft voice, as some of her words are hard to pick up on. We've provided subtitles for Erin's spoken words, which appear below. And it goes on to talk about the girls opening up about how their mother hated them and hated their relationship that they had with their father and did absolutely everything that she could to keep them separated. And how she was just like so jealous of them and everything that they did with him and would like punish them. And whenever he would travel for any of his like work stuff, it would get so much worse. Like the second that they made any noise or acted up in any way, they would like she would hurt them. And then eventually Josie had pulled Roxy out of school, right, for whenever she had broke that kid's finger or broke Erin's arm or whatever, and had quote unquote homeschooled her, but that is not really what happened. And they would she would tie them to that chair that Erin was found on, like the child chair with the leather straps, would tie them to that anytime that they did like anything wrong at all. And Erin goes on to talk about how, you know, she started doing this whole gaming thing and kind of keeping herself separated and out of like her mother's wrath. And that's why she would be so reclusive. And eventually her dad joined her for these gaming streams and helped her monetize it and set up like a secret private bank account so she could put all this money away so that she could leave home eventually and get away from her mom. And they had to keep it a secret. And that's why he would like sneak out of bed and like wouldn't sleep in the same bed as Josie every night, because he would go to the daughter's room to like help stream with her to like help her make this money and stuff. And she was planning on like saving enough money to like move out and to move in with Roxy. And her dad were going to go to this like video game conference that summer, and they had all of these plans and stuff. And they think that their mom could sense all of that, like that the change was coming. And then Alex asks Erin about Brooke, and she says that the night that Brooke came over after prom, Walter and Roxy were out, and how their mom was very jealous of Brooke and the attention that she would got from Roxy, how she hated her. And Erin had heard yelling, and when she came out, and when she like had peeked out, she had seen Josie hit Brooke, and then a terrible noise, and then like the silence that had followed it. And she had never confronted Josie about this, had never said anything about it, and had never told anybody until Walter, like right before his death. She finally had told somebody about this happening. And then she also goes on to talk about like the night that everything happened, that it was like after the dinner party, she was screaming at him and calling him, you know, like a pervert and all these things. And she hears the banging and these like terrible noises. And yet again, she like runs out of her room to see what's going on. And this time she sees her dad on the floor, like bleeding. And so Erin grabs the remote and starts like hitting her mom, trying to like save her dad and like protect him. And then they get into like this like crazy fist fight thing. And her mom pushes her to the floor and she hits her head and like passes out. And then obviously when she woke up, she's like tied to the chair. We cut to 4 weeks later and we're at Nathan's funeral. And Alex is reflecting about how his mom had died when he was young and then his brother had taken his own life. And so she's like realizing that his drinking issues that he had was due to him like trying to cope with these like really heavy things and how it was just stuff that he never wanted to like talk about. And then there's like her being interviewed by a therapist or whatever on the podcast for this like show that we're talking about here on Netflix. And Alex is talking about how she felt like she could never enter the podcasting space again and how she felt like she was just had made a terrible mistake and it was her fault that her husband died, but she needed to make a living for her kids and she had to do something. And when she released the first podcast episode, it had gone viral. And then it was a year after Nathan had died that Caitlin had reached out to her and then arranged to meet. And then that's what started the like Netflix thing. And so on like July of 2020, it's a year later, a year after the death, after all of this stuff, Alex finally ends the podcast and then announces that it'll be turned into the documentary. So that's kind of where we are now. So we're like officially caught up to like actual, I guess, sort of like present day stuff. And the updates are like Roxy and Erin are moving in together. Josie still hasn't been found. And so the podcast is just kind of ending with like out a conclusion in anyway, until 2 months later when she gets a letter from Josie. There was no like conclusion to the documentary or anything like when it had ended, but on November 2nd, 2020, 2 months after the release of the last episode of Alex Summer's podcast, Alex Summer received a letter in the post. And the letter says, Alex, it's taken me a long time to know what to say to you and how to say it. I listened to your podcast this summer. Basic bitch. Really? I've been under attack my whole life, Alex. All my life, and now from you too. When I first met you, I thought you were special. I thought it was some kind of destiny. Finally, someone who got me and who understood me. Someone who realized how hard my life had been. And I gave you my truth, Alex. And what did you do with it? Turned it into some tacky true crime rubbish when not 1 minute of it was true. None of it. And as for Erin and all of her lies, I knew she would lie. Of course she would lie. Her and Roxy trying to make me look bad when it was them all along. The fact that you bought into their act makes me think less of you, and I'm so disappointed in you. I really am. And I did not take Nathan from you on purpose. I told you that already. I explained it was an accident. I was giving him the right dose, but it stopped working, and he was making so much noise, so I had to give him more. How was I supposed to know that it could kill him? But still, you're holding it against me, acting as if I knew what I was doing, acting as if there's something wrong with me when there isn't. It's the world that's wrong. You and I both know that. Fate has brought us together twice now, Alex. Once the day that we were born, and then again on the night we were 45. And maybe it will find a way to bring us together again, and maybe then we can get back to where we were. I hope so. I really do. Please send my love to your lovely children, especially Leon. I had such a soft spot for him. A lovely boy, a delicate boy. Keep him safe. Alex folds the letter in half and puts it down on her desk. She looks at the interviewer and shakes her head wryly. The text below reads, at time of broadcast, Alex Summers has not heard from Josie Fair again. And then our epilogue is 16 months later. Josie is on a bus wearing a face mask because of COVID. And she's like overhearing these women in front of her talking about the Netflix documentary and how it had been released. And they're talking about how crazy this Josie lady is. And it's like absolutely insane. And talking about how she's so creepy, but also it's kind of weird, like the whole situation. And they don't think that like Roxy and Erin were totally honest either. And as they get off of the bus, she starts thinking to herself, trying to make sense of the things that live in her mind, all the snapshots of her life, the mistakes she has made, the lies she has told, her own reimagining of a life that started as an unborn child, ignored and unwanted in her mother's womb, brought into the world to feel every iota of her mother's mistake, a life that was always destined to end this way, in hiding, alone, a woman in a mask. And she remembers the things that she did as a child, as an adult, all the things she did not tell Alex. And she thinks of the things she said she had done, although she didn't. And the whole thing feels like a twisted, sickening knot of truths and untruths that she will never be able to unravel, that no one would ever unravel. But one thing shines through. It feels like the truth, and she hopes it is the truth because it defines her in so many ways. The night that she came home and found Roxy kneeling over the white-clad body of Brooke Ripley with tears coursing down her cheeks, wailing, "I didn't mean to do it, Mom. I didn't mean to." And Erin standing in the doorway staring and rocking back and forth with her hand to her mouth, and Roxy saying, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And the call to Walter in Newcastle, who talked to them so slowly and so insistently through what had happened next. The plastic sheeting in the store cupboard, the window in the bathroom that opened into the garage mews, the key in the drawer with the number 6 attached to the plastic tag. She thinks of the days that followed. The key growing hot in the palm of her hand, staring at it, turning it over and over, waiting for the doorbell to ring, waiting for something to happen, wanting the whole thing gone. Finished, and days later, after Roxy's disappearance, her hate-filled words as she left. "If you tell anyone, I'll just say it was you. I'll just say it was you." She thinks of the rose she had with Walter the night of the dinner at Alex's house, and how she'd pulled the key from the drawer and told Walter she was going to tell Alex everything right now, and that she was going to tell the world about their dirty little secret locked in the boot of his father's old Morris Minor in the garage behind their house. She remembers him clutching his chest, the stricken look on his face, and she remembers staring at him as he fell to the floor, staring and just watching as the color left his face, his fist against his chest. She tries to remember what happened after that, but even as the memories form, she's not sure they're true or if they're dreams, hallucinations. But Erin was there, she is sure, hitting her and hitting her and hitting her, and then the memories bleach out into nothing. She stares through the window of the bus, and for just a fleeting moment, Josie is sure. She is so sure that yes, that is what really happened, and that maybe she has not been a good mother, but a true mother, that she has done what any mother would do and protected her baby girl, kept her safe, saved her child from herself and the consequences of her anger, as she has always done and will continue to do, now, tomorrow, forever, wherever it might take. And she has done nothing wrong. Not really, not ever. All she has ever done, in her own way, is take care of the people she loves, try to help people, try to be a good person. She is so sure that this is the truth, so incredibly sure. And that's the end of the book. I don't think I feel any better. I really was hoping that like telling you all about it and like reading it again, because pretty much I read these books a second time whenever I like tell you about it, right? So I get to like experience it again. This wasn't helpful. I'm still upset. I feel empty. I feel empty after that. I was intrigued, and then I feel like it just fell so flat for me just now. I don't think I like that conclusion. I think that book just like died on the vine for me. I don't know why I feel this way. I just feel like I got edged. Hello? I just got like the worst anticlimactic thing in the world just now. And I don't know what to do with that. Maybe I'm still processing it, but I don't think so, because it's been like a day or two now, and I've talked through it twice. So like, or I've experienced twice, you know what I mean? I've talked through it once, and I'm like, I don't know, but I like Lisa Jewell's writing. Like objectively, I like the writing. Still so weird to read in like third person point of view. I'm still trying to get used to that with a lot of these thrillers and the way that that's done, but I don't know. Maybe it was the format. Maybe it was the reasoning, the logic. I felt really uncomfortable until the end. I don't know. That's just weird. How are you feeling? What are your thoughts? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Are you feeling the same thing I'm feeling? I just feel so meh right now. But I've also been recording for like 3 hours, so maybe I'm just tired, you know? I don't know. That's all I got, man. So comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. And you know the drill. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.